With its perfectly crispy chicken, boldly seasoned to perfection, and crisp shredded lettuce, both nestled in a perfectly toasted golden bun, it's no wonder the $1 McDonald's Hot and Spicy McChicken Sandwich is a classic. Cool it down and pair it with a refreshing Coke in any size for just $1 each. Get deals on your faves, only at McDonald's. Prices and participation may vary, cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Coca-Cola is a registered trademark of the Coca-Cola Company.
Campfire in the desert with some friends, talking about the world, how the sagas never end. Checking out the starlight, looking at the sky, laughing and then joking how the sun had made us high. Shadows rose around us, our sight began to fade. Stars glowed above us in the lonely night God made. Talking about the cosmos, where destiny might send us. We saw the light and learned that night of alien agendas. We heard about reptilians, Nordics and the Greek, how they're pro and con and neutral in a universal frame. Some would help us prosper on a higher cosmic plane. Others would derail us in the dark and hostile rain. Shadows rise around us, our sight begins to fade. But hope surrounds us in this lonely world God made. Thinking about the cosmos, where destiny might send us. You can see the light and unlearn about these alien agendas.
This is Tom Davis with Metatron Power and Light. Our songs are inspired by our own experiences and the stories of people we've met. We know what we've seen, and we know the truth. We are not alone.
What's unusual about Metatron Power and Light as a band is we share the same beliefs. We've all had similar experiences, and together through music we can explore the kinds of subjects that haven't been presented in exactly this way before.
We want everyone to know that what you're going through, we're going through. When you're being told one thing and seeing another, we're here with you. Music brings people together, and together we're strong.
Well, good evening, everybody. From the west of the Rockies to the east of the Rockies to worldwide. Well, hi everybody, I'm Gary. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Tonight we're going to be talking about ghost hunting. Our rig is all full of fuel. We're ready to go and find some ghosts tonight. A big shout out to all the truckers that keep America moving. Without you, well, we wouldn't have any beans in the store. To all my amateur buddies out there, a big 73s to you.
Across the world. This is probably the best radio station in the world.
Coming to you from some far point station, like a cosmic tumbleweed, both north and south of the Pleiades. Here's your host, Gary Anderson.
And that is me, boy. The weekend is coming up really fast. Well, you know, tomorrow we're going to get together with the whole entire clan, and we're going to have a barbecue. I'm looking forward to that. And then Sunday, the whole clan is going to go river inner tubing. Well, what better way to, well, celebrate what has happened in the past, to get out and have family all together. And that's what we need. We need to go through the healing stage. As you know, I lost 2 children here in the past, 5 weeks? Last week and a half ago, I lost my last one. I tell you, you know what? Being a parent is really hard. No, I'm not talking about when they're young changing those poopy diapers, but it seems like it just keeps going on for the rest of your life. Well, you know what? The weather here down at the compound in my studio right now, it is 103 in my studio. I've been running the fan in here all day, but it's hot out there. And I'll tell you what, I feel like I could get a suntan, but there's no sun here to get the tan. Well, guess what? Do you think the next, influx of money coming from the Congress and the Senate and the Treasury, do you think it should be capped at $40,000? Or do you think it should be capped at $75,000 per couple or $150,000 a couple? I know right now, to keep the economy going, we need a major influx of people spending. I was reading an article today, actually it's several, one on CNN, one on Fox, and it was people, economists, that has come out and said our economy is about ready to stall. So if Congress and Senate doesn't come up with something, our economy could take a big fall here in August. You know, we're all too young, pretty much, to remember the Great Depression. But I remember hearing horror stories from members of my family who are naturally no longer with us, saying that they had to stand in long lines, sometimes over a block long, just to get some loaves of bread. And there was no money. The banks went under. People lost their homes. And that's another thing they're talking about. If the economy tanks, there's going to be over 1 million. That's right, 1 million foreclosures here, starting all before the first of the year. And if they don't extend some type of ban to, let people stay in their house without making any payments, there's going to be a lot of evictions on people that are renting. It's going to be a really scary mess, and we're going to go for a ride, and hopefully we'll go to with a ride together, you know. James, how are you doing?
I am doing good, Mr. Gary, and I hope you're doing better today as well.
Well, the link you shared, by the way, it was a link I messed up on. I hit the button before I had everything inputted, and it created a link for the show, and I didn't have time to remove it, so I had to create another link with all the info who our guest is and all that stuff. So what you shared, if somebody clicks onto it, they're not going to hear anything.
Oh, because I looked on it. It looks okay.
Well, it looks good, but it won't work. I shared the one that does work right now. That one will work. The one you click onto, it'll go on there. They'll hear nothing but advertising as long as they stay on that link. They're not going to hear us talking. Okay. Now.
Gotcha.
Okay. I hope every one of you guys has been staying out of trouble, and I hope you're going to have a great weekend. Well, getting into wacky news, if my computer comes back up, there's not much in wacky news tonight. I don't understand why. But also in the news today, there was a lady shot by cops 5 times. And she was still alive, and her boyfriend, tried to get the cops to call for help. They ignored her while she died. So there's going to be a major lawsuit on that. I tell you what, a lot of weird things are going on right now in our country, and I don't like the way it's heading. James, do you like the way things are heading in this country?
No, I don't, and I got to tell you, from what you just said, people are already stressed out, so it doesn't take much to get them wound up, and plus the financial situation on top of everything. No, I don't like where it's headed at all.
Well, I was talking to somebody today because I got out of the house today and I did a lot of errands. But I was talking to a guy who owns an apartment complex. He said that he already got the notice of foreclosure on his apartment complex because here he has 30-some units and not one of his tenants have paid rent in over 5 months. And he said, I have to pay $20-some thousand a month on my mortgage. And how long can you pay it? You figure $20,000 a month times 5 months. That's what, $100,000?
Yeah, easily.
Well, how many people do you know that have $100,000 laying around to make up for it? So, I mean, it's scary. We're going to go for a real scary ride.
Yeah, for sure. We're already on that scary ride. That's the scary part of it right there. But, we talked about before, with all this rent, a lot of people haven't paid it, but yet the homeowners, what are they doing? They're, stuck holding the barrel. They still got to pay.
Well, it's crazy. My one son, filed for unemployment months ago, okay? And 2 weeks ago, he got a letter from Washington State Employment Security, right? An email saying they approved his unemployment. Well, he filed for unemployment 5 months ago. He gets an email saying they just now approved it and everything is processing. But yet he has not received 1 cent. Not 1 cent in 5 months. And if he wasn't living at home, he'd be living in his car or on the streets. How many people are in that situation right now? It is really, well, you know what? It's not right.
No, it's not right, and you're right. A lot of people, even before this ever happened, Gary, was already living week to week or month to month. So, and a lot of their businesses went under, and they're never going to come back. So, yeah, there's a big hurting going on.
Oh yeah,
sure.
And one of the stops I made today, James, was I stopped at my CPA's place, and I was talking to her, and she said that she's getting all these people that that filed their taxes on the 15th. But they owed money, and they didn't have the money to pay. So now, undoubtedly, they're going to get hit with penalties and interest so they can come up with the money. They're going to be hassled by the IRS. But don't forget, the IRS and also the treasurer of, Steve Muncie said, hey, don't worry about paying the IRS right now. Use the money to live. Remember him saying that?
I do remember him saying that. Absolutely.
Well, I guess if you have like 1 or 2 or 3 kids, right? And you got a car payment, you got insurance, and you have gas you have to put in, and food on the table, and if you don't have money coming in, okay, yeah, you use the money you were going to use for the IRS to, the family comes first. But then, well, guess what? Because you listen to, our treasurer of our country, of the Treasury Department and the IRS, you spent the money. Okay, now you don't have the money. And she said that it wasn't one or two of her clients. She said it was dozens upon dozens of people who are going to be, trying to set up payment plans, but they don't even have the money to make payments at this point. So, I mean, if you really think about it, the economy is not doing good. And today, guess what? The mortgage rates in this country is the lowest in history. It's less than 3%, less than 3% to finance a mortgage.
That's amazing. First of all, how many people can even get a mortgage finance right now?
Not many. That's the whole thing. And then on top of it all, one of my credit card companies today, I opened up the thing. I've never been late. I have very good credit rating, right? I opened this letter, and I'm not going to say the name of the company. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But anyway, they said, not in regards, because they showed me my credit score, around 800. They said, your credit score is great, but because of all the defaults on credit cards, we are lowering people's credit limit. So they lowered my credit limit down to half what it was. And
that's you're getting punished for what other people's doing. That's not fair.
No. So, I mean, for the people that are defaulting, which I don't blame them if you don't have a job, which is more important, paying your credit card or putting food on the table? But here's the catch, okay? These credit card companies, every month I go online and I make my payments, and they have this little thing. If you're having financial difficulty, we will work with you. Baloney. Here's what'll happen, okay? They'll work with you a little bit. They'll charge you extra money, right? But here's what happens if you don't make your payment. After about 3-4 months, if you're not making your payment, they turn it over to collection. Okay, now it might be in-shop collection with that, not with the mortgage company, with the credit card company, or it could be an outside source. So if they don't get money from you within about 3 or 4 months, they send it off to one of their attorneys, which they have agreement with. So let's say, I'm just using this as a term, you owe $300 on a credit card. Aha! Well, just think about it for a minute. Now they're going to put all these fees on it, your late fees each month, over the limit fees each month, right? Now they also then put attorney's fees on it and a whole bunch of other fees. So your $300 debt is now around $1,200, $1,300, and it's clicking each month. Now, most of these attorneys are like sharks. You know, like that TV show on Sci-Fi? They had Shark Week numerous times.
Oh, yeah, like Shark Tornado.
Yeah, well, here's what's going to happen. Okay, they'll wait about 30 to 60 days. And if you don't make payment, they're going to do one of two things. They're going to file a lawsuit. Now, when they file a lawsuit, they put the court cost on. Then they put their extra fees on it. So now, all of a sudden, your $200 or $300 debt on your credit card is around $1,900.
Right, and here's the craziness of that. If you couldn't afford to pay the $300 that you owe, how in the world are you going to pay the $1,800? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, they'll take payments, but as they're taking payments, they're putting finance charges on it. But they hang this little thing. If you miss a payment or a day late, don't worry about it. What type of card do you... Oh, we already know what type of card we have, because what they'll do behind your back is get a judgment. Okay? They'll send the legal papers saying they're going to sue you. And a lot of people can't afford going to an attorney. So all it takes is not to reply with the right type of form when you get served. The next thing you know, they get a judgment against you. Now your $1,800 bill is $3,000. Think about that. Your $300 original credit card debt is now $3,000.
Yeah, that's a pretty good bracket. I know if I had a racket like that, they'd probably charge me with a RICO Act or something.
Yeah, it's racketeering in the meanest way to say it. Well, you know the house that was used for the Golden Girls? Remember the TV show Golden Girls?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, they used the picture of somebody's home. They got the rights to use it for the show, right? Just because that house was used in Golden Girls, the house is listed now for $3 million.
Oh boy, what's it originally worth for real? Like maybe 100,000 or a couple.
Oh, come on. Okay, you live in Ohio. Okay, do you realize where I live at? You can't buy a house for $100,000.
Really?
You can't buy a house for $100,000 in the Seattle Tacoma area or on the West Coast. Forget it. A dump. Okay, I'm not saying your house is a dump, but if you took your house and moved it over into Seattle, automatically $300,000, $400,000.
Yeah, I don't doubt that because I remember I used to live on the East Coast. But I think the Golden Girls lived in Florida, I think, which is expensive too.
Yeah, but that was, put it this way, a house, maybe it was worth about $500,000 or $1 million, is now worth $3 million, according to the article.
Yeah, they definitely added to it because of, what it was used for, I guess.
Well, just think about this. How many people make a trip to see the house that the Golden Girls lived in without realizing they never even lived in it? It was just a shot of the house that they used,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's same. Well, up in Cleveland here, they have the house that the Christmas Story was in there with Ralphie and Darren McGavin. They made that movie.
Oh, Darren McGavin. I knew him.
Oh, I like Darren. He's cool.
He went up to school, high school. He was a football player. A lot of people don't realize it. Up here in Puyallup, Washington, he went to Puyallup High School.
I didn't know that. I did know he played football, but I didn't know where it was. But yeah, he was good.
Yeah, I got to know him years ago. I interviewed him on one of my radio shows back. Real nice guy. He spent most of his later years living on a houseboat on a river in France.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's amazing. But I remember the old Koshak show. I used to love that show, Night Stalker.
Yeah, he couldn't wait to get out of that because the network lied to him. They said, oh, yeah, we're going to give you this budget. We're going to do all this stuff. And we're going to give you so much control of the show. And then all of a sudden, they kind of took it away from him. And that's why it only lasted one season.
I know. That was too bad. It really was. But he's been on a lot of good shows, though, over the years that he was in.
Oh, yeah. But everybody knows him for Night Stalker. Let's face it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that movie he made there, I can't think of. I think it was Christmas Story. I think that's what it called.
Oh, yeah. You remember that lamp? I got one of those lamps in my bedroom. I'm glad we talked about it because I just made room yesterday on top of my filing cabinet to put my lamp. That sexy leg?
Yeah, those are made in Italy because wasn't it made in Fragile?
I have no idea. I got it, off of Facebook from the marketplace or whatever it was here a long time ago. But I got the lamp and, I'm going to put it right there. And I can just look at that beautiful, sexy leg while I'm doing the show. And at the same time, I can look at a skeleton. I can look at a knight. It's a skeleton or one of these creepy monsters. By the way, I just got a grandfather's. I'm into clocks. I just put in a grandfather clock in here with my collection of antiques. I tell you what, I'm just obsessed with all this weird stuff. Well, a leopard escapes enclosure in South Carolina Zoo. And at this point, they don't know where it's at. And that happened 4 hours ago.
Oh, that's nice. I know one thing. They'll probably find it in the last place they look. My goodness.
Well, you know what? I wouldn't want to run across... Here, kitty. I wouldn't want to run across one of those.
No, that's a kitten on steroids.
Oh, yeah. Could you imagine you're a single mother? You're a single mother. You go online, like eBay or someplace like that, hint, and you decide you want to buy a sex toy. Now, you have a couple children ranging from 13 under, right? When you order the sex toy, it says it'll be discreetly sent in a brown paper, wrapper. So nobody would know. But guess what? The lady was so embarrassed. Her local postman, which she knows, knocks on her door. I got a package for you, and with a smirk on his face. And on the box, it was the box that they shipped the item in to the distributor, right? So they didn't even repackage it. They just put a label on it and the postage and sent it out.
Oh,
and on the box, it said vibrating penis.
It's on the box. Oh, my goodness.
Batteries are included.
Oh, that's terrible. That poor person that opened the door only to see that.
Well, wouldn't you be embarrassed?
Yeah, I guess I would.
Well, I sure would. Number one, I wouldn't have to order one of those things, but that's not the point. The point is that the embarrassment. You know, another thing that happened, and it's going on. People are starting to drink and spit. In ice cream cartons again, in soft drink bottles, like tea bottles where they're, I'm not going to mention the brands, and in milk. And right now, with the virus going on, that is really, really scary. I don't understand why people would even think about doing something like that.
People are just evil, Gary, and I got to tell you, as far as I know, that people that are doing it, they could be charged with some kind of terrorism or something. Wasn't that what we heard a while back?
Well, they can, and the bad part is some of these idiots, right? They don't realize these stores have cameras in there for security, so they know, at least by their face, who it is.
Oh, yeah, they got cameras everywhere, and I got to tell you something else. Some of these people are filming themselves doing it and putting it online like, hey, look at me. I don't even know what's wrong with that.
I don't know, but it makes me leery want to go buy milk or go buy anything, If you buy canned soda, which I know, guess what? There's a shortage on cans right now, aluminum, because it wasn't essential thing for people to be going back to work at. So there is a big shortage. And another thing, try to get change from the bank right now. There's a big shortage on change because people are hoarding money like you wouldn't believe.
Wow, I didn't know that one. That's a good one. I know one thing. I got a whole bunch of cans and a bunch of change. So I guess I'm headed in the right direction.
Yeah, but is your cans empty?
Yeah.
Then how are you going to drink the soda it's in them?
I got some that's full, too.
So that means you got to go buy not canned soda. You got to buy bottles soda. That's what I'm saying. There's a shortage on, you're going to find a big shortage on soft drinks and anything that comes in a can, including Coors Light.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but yeah, you're right about that. That was another thing. You're talking about the essential stuff. I know the liquor stores were open around here, so they must have been essential at the time.
Oh, they must have been. And did you know, because of this virus, the pandemic is going on, we are brewing the country, the biggest all-time, you ready for this? Alcoholics.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't. That doesn't surprise me because people are already stressed out and, losing jobs, losing money, can't pay their bills, can't feed their family. And a lot of people resort to, alcohol to help forget about these things.
Yeah, well, you know what? I guess maybe alcohol, you have a choice of, well, do I want to eat tonight or do I want to get drunk and forget about today? And a lot of people are choosing to get drunk. And the problem is, this is going on 6 months, and it's going to go on. Have you noticed the virus is spiking? And they're saying we're going to get hit with a second wave very shortly. And the next 2 weeks, what they're saying will be bigger than the original spike. The original spike we had in this country. They're saying within 2 weeks, it's going to be worse than that.
Yeah, that is scary. And here's the other scary part to go with that. What you just said is we have schools that are debating to open again, which most schools I know around here open up about the mid to latter part of August. And then you've got fall following that, which is always flu season. So these are two factors that are really into play.
I don't know. Maybe they'll have to figure something out, homeschooling. I don't know. Well, before we go to break, teenagers are using these face masks and dressing up to look like old people. Now, why are they looking and trying to look like old people? Well, naturally, they want to go buy alcohol.
Naturally, that's what the trend was when I was younger.
Well, now they got the perfect way to do it. They can go out and dress like old people.
But that, I'm sure it probably works somewhere.
Okay, we're going to go on break, and then when we come back, who's our guest tonight?
Our guest tonight is Tony Rathman, and we're going to be talking about ghost hunting and all his experiences, and he's very scientific based.
And it's going to be exciting here tonight. So stay tuned. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. I'm your host of the most, Gary Anderson. Maybe the computer will kick in. Let's see. They updated again. So here we go.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
Across the world. This is probably the best radio station in the world.
Do you have a paranormal story you want to share on Night Dreams Talk Radio? You could be a guest. Email us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
Good evening. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary Anderson. And here's Gary.
And here I am. I hate that. Every time the computer updates. Remember I warned you yesterday, James, that you better watch out? Well, guess what? My computer's all updated yesterday. And while I was out running around, guess what? They all updated again today. And when they update, I'll tell you what happens. Till I run everything a few times, everything runs slow.
Yeah, what is up with all the bunch of updates like back to back? That's a lot.
Well, you know what's going on, don't you? Russia is hacking into everything right now.
Oh, I see. I didn't hear that, but I hear that all the time. You don't know what to believe or not, but it doesn't surprise me though.
So what's happening is people like Microsoft is jumping on to check for malware and check for things and adding more security to, your computer to keep you from getting hacked. You don't want to be hacked, do you?
No, I don't want to be hacked. Never. Well, not at all. But you know what? There's a lot of that going on out there. It's ridiculous.
Well, a big shout out to our best friend, Barb, out there, to Jay Ron, and to everybody else is out there in Radioland. Well, let's get our guest on.
Yeah.
And let's make sure that computer is running. Okay, so we got that going. And then we will be talking about ghost hunting here tonight and some experiences he's done since Tony's been on the show here the last time. Hi, Tony. How are you doing?
Gary, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I can tell you, you know what? It's been a rough month and a week.
It has. Let me send you my sincere condolences for what has happened to you. I can't even imagine that type of tragedy, and just to let you know, you definitely have my sincere condolences. That's just I feel horrible for you.
Well, thank you. It makes it really hard. My wife last night had a long talk with me. She goes, well, you need to continue with your show and not miss any shows. But, I tell you what, I can go a day without getting depressed. And all of a sudden, somebody will say the wrong word to me. And then I think of my two sons. And then the next thing I know, I'm all bummed out. And then it makes it really hard to sit behind the microphone and be jolly. Now, I've been doing this for 44 years. But I can tell you, I've never lost two sons before.
No, I mean, that is a tragic, life-changing event, and just something that, is extremely hard to process and extremely hard to deal with. So I feel for you, and I hope, I'll send plenty of prayers to, help you through it. But, I definitely understand why this would be a troubling time for you. No doubt about that at all.
Well, put it this way. This is going to sound bad. If they both would have been in a car accident, for example, okay, I could digest that a little bit easier than one of them dying. They died, ready for this, a month apart to the day, and within 2 hours of each other.
Wow.
That's the part my brain is, sitting there not digesting.
And completely understandable. I mean, that's just, one is bad enough. Two, just unthinkable to be able to handle and process that. So I give you a lot of credit for being on your show, and I know that can't be easy.
Well, like I said, I have my good moments and bad moments. And getting into what you do, because you do the paranormal ghost hunting. Now, my first son that passed on, Kevin, was a twin. So his twin is his sister. She claims, now she is 26 years old, or going on 26, their birthday's coming up in a week, that he's communicating with her at night. And this is
possible. Yeah. Very possible.
I believe it. I really do, because I find what is unique. When they were little kids, like 3-4 years old, they had their separate bedrooms clear across the house. So if one was talking, you couldn't hear in the other bedroom where the other one was at. Kevin would be talking to Alyssa, his sister. And if you walk down the hallway and make the turn to her bedroom, she would be talking to Kevin. And we were astounded because they were talking to each other in a conversation. This didn't happen one time. This was all the way growing up. They in their sleep, they were talking to each other.
Wow.
So we figured, this can't be. So what I did one time, and my wife did, she sat in front of the bedroom of Kevin and was taking notes of what he was saying. I went to Alyssa's room, stood there and was taking notes, and they were literally having a conversation.
Sure. In their sleep with each other.
In their sleep. They were actually talking and carrying a conversation. But this went on for years.
Wow. And science does validate some, I'm trying to think of the right word to use, peculiar connections between twins. And, things like what you're just mentioning have been documented and recorded that there is a mental connection between the two that exceeds what normal interaction with non-twin humans is. And if you do any research into that and look at what the capabilities that twins have, there's a connection that goes beyond the everyday connection, and some of the things that they're capable of doing exceeds what the normal human can do. And so that that doesn't faze me at all. That's very possible.
Well, what is very interesting, okay, and I don't care if any of the listeners believe this or not, but my daughter came up to us about 2 weeks ago and was telling us the communication she had that night when she was sleeping. And Kevin told her how he died. Now, the only people that we spared her from that, okay? We didn't want her to know.
Well, of course.
But she sat there and sat there with me and my wife, and she said, well, Kevin told me how he died and explained everything. And it was exactly what the coroner and what the police detective said would happen, almost to a T.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, my God.
That's amazing. And the fact that, as far as us being paranormal researchers and having looked at this from every side that's possible, and one of the first things that spirits try to do when they pass over is still communicate with loved ones. And obviously a twin sister would be the first connection because of that bond that was literally established at their birth, being twins. That would be the easiest connection for him to make contact with. And of course, he's going to try to explain everything. Let her know, hey, I'm still around. That's the most important thing. Is that death. Our perspective of it is different from what we believe, at least when I say we from a paranormal side, what actually happens. And there's your proof right there that he is still mentally cognitive. His personality, his spirit, his brain, not brain, but his intelligence is there, and he passed that information on to his twin sister. That is amazing.
But the thing is, it's still going on virtually every night since he died. And, she came up to us again here about 3 days ago and said, he said he's going to be with me. He's not going to leave. Now, I don't know. I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. If he's staying with her, does that mean he's not crossing over?
Well, not necessarily. We, over the last decade that we've been doing this, we have realized that spirits have the ability to come and go as they want. Free will is something that's given to us as humans. It's also something we have as spiritual entities. So if he's staying, maybe he's being protective, maybe he's trying to console and comfort, whatever the reason may be. First of all, it's positive, so I wouldn't be concerned about it. But he has his own free will. I have other friends and some clients that have come to us and said, okay, this is happening. How is this happening? Why is it happening? And it's a similar situation. I have a woman whose father literally visits her monthly, and he's got the freedom to come and go. He's not stuck here. He's not stuck on the other side. He's got the ability to come and go. And as a matter of fact, I just heard from this woman today, and he had showed up the last 3 days, and today is actually her birthday, and that was why I'm sure he made multiple visits. But no, I do not believe by any means you need to worry about that it's hindering his crossover in any form. That free will that goes with you as a spirit gives you the ability to move in and out of dimensions as they need or want to.
That is so interesting. Mal, my other son, nobody's heard anything. I mean, I haven't had any dreams of him trying to contact me. My wife hasn't. My other son, my other daughter, and even Alyssa, who's communicating with her twin, nothing. Just nothing. It's like it's gone.
Right. And, different, again, everything that I'm referring to is theory, because there are no scientific proofs within the paranormal. But the theory is that different spirits are at different levels of being able to communicate and move between the planes and interact either both verbally, through dreams, moving objects. And, it just may be a fact that the one son has more abilities, and the other one just hasn't learned yet, and that may come at a later date. But I wouldn't be concerned about that either. It's a transformation process when you cross over, and there's a healing period on their side. I could talk about all the different theories about extended family members, greeting them, comforting them, explaining where they are, what has happened, what they can and cannot do now, where they are. So, and then there's a whole theory about a healing process that takes place, and the amount of time that healing process takes can be determined based on who's going through it. So there's a variety of reasons for why that might be at this point, but they're all within the realm of each spirit is an individual, has individual personality, has individual thought process, has individual emotions attached to it. So it may take one a little longer than the other, and that would be my reason for defining what you're explaining.
Well, the very first thing, and he said it several times. He said he's more happy now than he's ever been, and that's what she said that he keeps saying. Because on a motorcycle accident, he knocked out some teeth. And he was going to get some teeth implanted because, he was embarrassed because, back about 8 months ago, he knocked out some front teeth. And he said to her, he goes, I have all my teeth and I'm happy.
Yep.
And, he says, and then he says, I'm watching after you. I'm here. I'm here to take care of you.
You can't ask for better information to come through under, like you said, what's an absolute horrible and tragic circumstance. but you're getting information from him that is all positive. I mean, the one thing, if you look at near-death experiences, or, you know, the hundreds, thousands of documentations that are out online or on TV, and you look at the reoccurring theme that comes from people who say that they've passed over and come back. And the one thing they say is that it's full of love, everybody's happy. So you just defined the number one concept that people who have experienced that and come back say, that it's a complete loving feeling. Everybody's, who they look as if they want to look, feel as if they want to feel, are reminiscing within the happy time of life. And, so basically that's what you're explaining to me by telling me this story, which just confirms all the other documented cases of people who had near-death experiences where they passed over and came back.
Well, what I find interesting, my daughter has never lied to us. Now, she's developmentally delayed. Like I said, she's gone 26. She was born with no thyroid. So she's running emotionally like about a 17, 18-year-old. But she has never, ever lied. And she works in a hospital. She has a very respectable job at the hospital. But here's what she also told me. She said, like, the very first contact she had with him, she wasn't even asleep, she said. She swears she was awake. And he told her that when all this happened, he saw bright lights. And then he saw his grandparents. And he saw relatives. And they said, you can go back. Now, this poor kid has had both shoulders operated on. He was epileptic. He had seizures quite often. And he was in and out of hospital. He suffered a lot of pain off and on through the years.
Right.
And he said to Alyssa, he goes, I don't want to go back. And, the funny is that the doctors who did the autopsy said they couldn't find anything that would have caused his death. Let alone, they said the same thing about my second son. They're scratching their heads. So, this is really a weird situation. But, I'll be honest with you. I've been doing this 44 years, Tony, on the air. And I interviewed a lot of ghost hunters, a lot of psychics and mediums, which I don't have many of them on the show. Because I never believe, I'll be honest with you, and please don't take this wrong.
No,
I never believed there was a hereafter. I always thought when you're dead, it's like when your computer dies. It's over with. Your hard drive's dead, you put a new hard drive in or get a new computer. It's over with. But this kind of like has me in a total shock where all these years, 68 years, out of those 68 years, 60 years I was thinking, once you're dead, you're dead. That's it. You're gone. Nothing left. But now I'm sitting here scratching my head, Tony, and I'm starting to realize maybe there is something after we pass on.
Yeah, and I totally understand the skepticism factor of it. I grew up, my father was a chemistry teacher, a physics teacher, a physical science teacher. So my entire growing up was all science-based. If I asked a question about how something worked, I was a skeptic. I didn't believe in ghosts either. I was right down the path where you were, because it sounds like it's changing now. But until I met my wife and she wanted to go out ghost hunting, well, of course I did it to humor her. But what we came back with, for months I tried to figure out how we were getting voices in an area where there were no other people, how we were catching things on camera that were not there. And this literally for, 3, 4, 5 months just absolutely destroyed me. This isn't possible. That's how it got started for us. Well, whatever that was, 10, 11 years ago.
So what you're saying, Tony, that your wife got you into ghost hunting? Or did
correct.
Oh, wow.
That is absolutely correct. She grew up in the Philippines, became an American citizen, 9, 10 years ago, and ended up coming to the U.S. I met her, and she would always tell me stories about things that had occurred in the Philippines. ghost stories, things in the house, seeing white ladies. I mean, she's just got story after story after story. And then I remember going to the Philippines to meet her family, and I remember her mother telling me same thing, story after story after story. And so she grew up with it. She grew up with seeing things. She grew up with hearing things. I probably can say that I did experience stuff, but I dismissed it because if science couldn't explain it, I ignored it. If science couldn't explain it, it didn't exist, and I just push it away. But then one Valentine's Day, she said to me, she said, I want to do something different. I said, okay, what would you like to do? She said, I want to go ghost hunting. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to make that happen? Well, I did some research online, found a place locally that had a reputation of being haunted, went out, bought her some relatively inexpensive equipment because I thought this was going to be a one-time deal and we'd never touch it again. I think I got her a digital recorder, night vision camera, EMF meter, and there was something else. I can't remember what it was, but that's how it started. We got home that weekend, and she was calling me over every 3 to 5 minutes. Look what's in this photo. You've got to hear this response. Where did this come from? I could not figure it out, and it blew me away. And then we started going back. I think we investigated that hotel over 50 times in the last decade or so. And I mean, I've got more evidence from it than I can even store, but it was amazing, and it was an eye opener. And we kept doing it and kept expanding over the years. And, we expanded outside of hotels. We started going to historical places. And then after a couple of years of getting some good background experience, we started doing private home investigations. Then we started traveling outside of the state to all over the country. And then within the last year, we started doing locations outside of the U.S. About a year ago, we were in the Philippines, and we got to investigate the Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City, which was just an amazing location and one of the freakiest I've ever been in. But I'd go back in a heartbeat. I don't know if my wife will, but I'd go back in a heartbeat.
Well, again, because we have new listeners all the time. Why don't you explain a little bit about that place in the Philippines, the history of it, and how old it was, and what things were going on, and what did you see and record?
The building today is called the Diplomat Hotel, but it was originally constructed by a group of monks, and it was called the Retreat House. There's a name before Retreat House. It's eluding me at the moment, but basically what it was built as was a religious house, a retreat house for monks and nuns. And it sits on top, I would say probably at about, I'm going to have to guess about 12,000 feet above sea level. I mean, it literally sits on the top of a mountain, overlooks in the entire city of Baguio City. It's absolutely beautiful. But then they ran into financial problems keeping it up. And World War II broke out, and when General Yamashita came to the Philippines to take over, they actually used the Diplomat as one of their military offices. So some of the tragedies that occurred in this building were during World War II, they actually beheaded all the monks and the nuns that were in there at the time, which obviously was a terrible tragedy.
Oh, wow.
After that, when the war ended, they remodeled the hotel, the retreat house, and turned it into a hotel. And they had a couple of suicides in the hotel. They had some kids that were playing around in one of the basement sections. One of them fell down a pit that is in the outside area, drops about 15 feet, I think, into like an underground room that connects to some other tunnels. But there was a list of tragedy after tragedy. Plus there were soldiers and stuff, both U.S. soldiers, Japanese soldiers that were killed during skirmishes, in the area, and then there were some American, Italian, and I can't remember the other nationality that was there during that time, but they were killed in battles. And it was amazing. We walked into this building for the first time during the day. It was probably about, 2:00 in the afternoon. And you could feel the overwhelming presence. It had 4 stories with porches on the 3rd and 4th level that you could actually walk on the roof and look out over the city. It was absolutely amazing. But even during the day, you could feel you weren't alone, even with other people during the day, because they allowed you to come in, wander around, and go as you please. But we wanted to do a nighttime investigation. Well, they at first they said yes, and then they immediately came back and said, no, I'm sorry, we can't let you do that. We're not comfortable with somebody being in the building overnight. Well, it turns out it wasn't a matter of being in the building or damage to the building. They weren't comfortable because they let a group prior to us do an overnight, and apparently there were some issues with the people that did the investigation. And when I say issues, I'm referring to strange behavior, possession type concerns when they left. Well, luckily, Sheree had some connections. We went to the mayor. The mayor talked to us. We explained what we wanted to do, and that we've been doing this for years. And great guy. He said, absolutely, I'll write you a handwritten acceptance to spend the night and investigate. And so we got in. The moment we walked in there at night, the difference between how it felt during the day and how it felt at night was just overwhelming.
Well,
and,
now, Tony, what did it feel like during the day when you went in? Did you have any pit in your stomach? And when you went in there at night, what type of feeling did you have?
During the day, it felt uncomfortable, but not to the point where you had that nauseating feeling in your stomach like you had to run out. There were other people there, and it's broad daylight, but you could still feel the energy. You could feel that you weren't alone. Your skin would tingle, your hair would stand up, even during the day. But it was all good indications that there was something there. But at night, my wife and I have investigated hundreds of places. And this is the first time within the first 20 minutes of walking into the building, she said to me, hey, can we go outside for a minute? Now, it was pouring rain outside.
Okay,
rain.
Okay, Tony, I hate to do it, but we need to take a break. So when we come back, we're going to pick up where it was, pouring rain. So
pouring rain.
Yeah.
You got it.
Okay, sir. We'll be right back in about a minute and a half. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. So, get yourself something stiff to drink. Get yourself an easy chair. Prop up your feet because you might kind of get scared a little bit here tonight. We'll be right back.
You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com.
If you would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your local radio station, let them know. Tell them to check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com, and thank you.
Across the world, this is probably the best radio station in the world.
You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
And we are back with Tony. Now, Tony, you said it was pouring down rain. So what happened
Correct.
next?
It was raining like crazy, and I've never heard her say 20 minutes into investigation, hey, can we go outside? So I said, Sheree, you realize it's pouring? And she said, yeah, I know. So the fact that she just said, yeah, I know, told me something was wrong. So I said, okay, we were on the 3rd floor, second floor, I can't remember. But she was so disoriented, she didn't even remember how we got up. So I said, come on, this way. So I took her out. And we stood underneath this big overhang outside. It's pouring, it's lightning. And she's like, are you hearing those voices? And I said, yeah. I said, I kept asking you if you were hearing, but I didn't think you heard me because you weren't answering. She said, oh, I heard you. She said, I just didn't want to answer. She said, I was kind of freaking out because the second we walked into the building, I mean, that horrible stomach feeling, like you were feeling nauseous, like there were people literally staring at you from every hallway, and it was so dark in there that, without night vision on the cameras and stuff, we had flashlights and stuff too, of course, but it was pitch black. And the second we walked in, that feeling started, and we wandered up to the second floor and we were wandering around, and voices were coming out of nowhere, and not all of them were even English. When we got our recordings back and we started listening, we have Japanese, we have Tagalog, which of course is the language for the Philippines. We had Italian, and we had English. So we got 4 different languages in EVPs from the night that we spent there. And some of the responses are so clear, it sounds like there's literally another person standing right there. It's not the EVP that was a whisper that you have to figure out what every other word is because you can barely hear it. I mean, these are clear. And, I mean, we had conversations or responses from monks, nuns, soldiers, both Japanese and American. We had some statement, and I don't know, I still haven't figured out, well, maybe I did, I looked it up, but somebody said Koji Lili, and it's not Tagalog, it's not Japanese, and I remember trying to research it, and it came up as Italian. Of course, if I spelled it right, that's the big question. But I can't remember what the definition was, but something about, something to do with mistakes in life or something along that line. Maybe there's a listener that knows what Koji Lili means, but it is so clear on the recording. It's amazing. And I was we were switching our equipment because our batteries had died. And I was switching out the battery, and I had lifted it up to put it into the bottom of the camera. And I was standing next to this metal gate, and something grabbed my shirt and pulled my arm up against the gate.
Now wait a minute.
My wife's
Tony,
my wife's camera wasn't aimed at me, so we didn't get it on video, but it was freaky.
Now, Tony, do you mean something physically grabbed you?
Grabbed my shirt and pulled my arm and pinned it up against the metal gate.
For how long did that take place for?
Oh, it lasted maybe 2-3 seconds, but my arm was up against it because by the time Cherie turned, because I don't know if I didn't scream, but I made a noise. So I remember her turning around, and my arm was literally up against the gate. And as she turned, she saw it, and then it released, and my arm came back down. But that was a little unsettling at first because it was so strong and had so much energy, and literally my arm was just pulled from the camera, the battery fell to the ground, and my arm was up against this metal gate and was stuck there for a couple of seconds. It was phenomenal.
Did you try moving your arm while it was stuck there and you couldn't move it? Or, I mean, was there pressure on it?
Well, it happened so fast that by the time I realized that my arm was no longer putting the battery in the camera, it was done. I mean, it ended. But it was long enough that I felt my shirt tug, and then it tugged harder, and my arm was up against the gate. And then, I made a noise, she returned, and then my arm was back down. But it was one of those absolutely, there were no questions as to what happened. I mean, even my shirt, even when my arm came down, the spot where it pulled my shirt was still sticking out. So you could see exactly where they grabbed it and pulled.
Oh, wow. Were you scared when that happened? Was that the first time you've ever had that experience?
No. Luckily, it hasn't been. I mean, I've been slapped, punched, scratched. I've had objects thrown at me, rocks, small boards, a variety of things. So no, it wasn't my first interaction where I had actually been touched or so that helped that I didn't, completely freak out. But it was unsettling because the power that it takes a spirit to do that gives you a very good indication of what's in there, and the energy it takes for them to physically manipulate solid objects takes quite a bit of energy. And the fact that they did that, and they did that relatively quickly, we were only in there maybe an hour and a half at that time, and we knew we had the rest of the night to spend in there. It was probably the one place we've investigated that I would put at the top of the list of unsettling feeling and a little bit of fear. I'm not going to lie, a little bit of fear.
Now, did you feel like there was any evil in there, evil presence?
Yeah, that was the first thing Cherie said, reason why she wanted to leave. She's like, the statement she said to me when we were outside, when I was talking about the voices, she said, yep, I heard everyone, didn't want to answer, but she said, my biggest fear, the hallways are completely dark, and they're relatively small. They're maybe, 4 or 5 feet in width, and they go on for, 100 feet, 200, 300, 400 feet. Each hallway is different. But there's curves in every hallway. And she said, I knew that if I kept walking, I was going to go around a corner and run into something I did not want to see. And she said, I just needed a break. I needed to get out. I needed to go outside, get some fresh air, calm my mind down before I could go back in. So we went out. We spent maybe 20 minutes outside, just, talking, getting our mind set back to return. And she did great, though. I mean, she went back. We spent the rest of the entire night there. But it was so funny because when they had security guards that have to let you in a main gate down the road before you can even get up to the hotel. And first thing the guard said is, why are you here? And, we said we have permission from the governor, from the mayor. We handed him the note. He opened up the gate. He walked about 20 steps from the guardhouse to the Diplomat Hotel, said, have fun, turn around and walk back. And Cherie said, you're not coming in? He goes, there's no way I'm going in there at night.
What a security guard. I tell you that. If something happened, I'm not going to go check it out. I don't blame him. If you had those type of encounters, I'm sure maybe he's had a few and heard a few. Have you ever checked any records to see how many people were executed, died, tortured, and all that stuff in that place?
No, I have not had a chance. It's on my to-do list along with about 100 other things. But that was one of our plans, was to do the research to find out names and tragic events, deaths that had occurred at that building. We just have not had an opportunity. And like I said, it's been about a year or so, maybe a little more since we've been there. It's just time-wise, things have been short. But one of the things the guard did tell us when Cherie said to him, I'm not going anywhere near it, was there was a group during the day that was touring, and they were taking photos. Well, one of the photos that they took had a man in the photo when the room that they photographed, nobody was in. Well, they noticed what he was wearing, and it was very similar to the uniform that the guards wear. So when they were walking out, one of the security guards was standing by the front door, and they showed him the picture. And the security guard freaked out and said the guy's name and said, this is so-and-so. He died 6 months ago. Their security guard house that watches the front gate where you drive up is about, 20 feet off the road, and it's on like this cliff. Well, that security guard had walked out at night, guess he was having a cigarette or something, slipped on the edge of the rock, fell and hit the road, and passed away.
Oh,
but
wow.
They caught him on a photo inside the Diplomat Hotel.
That would be so scary. And now, when you were there, when you were hearing these voices, did anybody kind of tell you what happened to them, or what type of things were you hearing? What were they saying? At least the ones you could understand.
Yeah, they were saying all sorts of things. In fact, I remember at one point during the night, Cherie and I literally sang out loud, "One at a time, please. You're overlapping. We can't make it out." Although when we started listening to the recording, and what was really helped decipher who we were talking to was the EVP sessions that we did. And we did, I don't even know how many, half the night was done just with EVP, because we could physically hear them talking with our own ears. But Cherie was asking, were there nuns here? Were there priests here? All the answers were yes. Were you killed? Yes. By whom? Japanese. We had American soldiers saying they wanted to go home. Cherie asked, do you miss your family? Yes. And then we got an actual response that, wasn't a word or two. This was like a full sentence. He gave his name, and I'm trying to think what it was off the top of my head. I'm going to draw a blank at the moment, but he gave his first and last name, said he was a sergeant, and he said he needed to get out of here to get back to his wife. And then there was something said after that, which I don't remember, but the amount of communication that came through in that location was probably higher than any other location we had been in, like I said, and in 4 different languages, which was just absolutely incredible.
I would have been so scared. You would have not even seen the rear end of me. I would have been out that door probably the first time I heard a voice, especially when you're picking it up, not with a recorder or a digital recorder, but you're hearing it physically. That is right. Unique and scary. I mean,
Yeah, it was probably one of the scariest places we've been in to date, and it was such an uneasy feeling. But the other part of it, though, is that there were some good, what we consider to be good. You asked if there was anything negative there, and yeah, there was. But there were also some good spirits there. And I mean, we have recordings where they're actually saying, "Don't go there, back up, don't stand there, be careful." It's just it's amazing how there's always a balance. And when we go to different locations, we run into that a lot, where somebody says, "Oh my gosh, there's something extremely negative here," and that may very well be the case. But what we usually determine is that there's always a balance. If there's negative, there's positive there too, and they I don't know if it's an afterworld battle between good and evil, just like there is on the earth today, but that battle continues, and you've got ones that look out for you, and you've got ones that want to hurt you. But it was a very, very uneasy experience, and then probably the longest night I've ever had. But I'd go back. I don't know if my wife would, but I would definitely go back.
Now, why are these people still roaming the halls of the hotel and not gone to the light or the other side? Is it because they were tortured and executed, or or maybe they don't even realize they're dead?
Well, that's a question that paranormal researchers have been trying to answer since the whole conception of paranormal research. The theories are that either yes, during a traumatic death, they don't move on because they're looking for revenge, or they're completely upset that their life was shortened and they didn't want it taken away, and they're still trying to connect with the living. There's the fact that there's the theory that if you commit suicide, you are stuck in that place, and we've experienced that in many locations that we've investigated. We had a guy that had killed himself, I think, over 80 years ago, and we actually got him to speak. He actually threw himself off a balcony in an old hospital in Jerome, Arizona, and we knew the name because of the record, but he gave his name. He explained he was still there. So that's another reason. Third reason is because, maybe they don't know that they're dead, and they're just assuming that, life is still going on. They may not understand that they can't communicate with people coming and going, or they're not interacting. Or, there's a variety of reasons based on the individual circumstances of how their life was taken. But again, it's all theory because there's no scientific proof behind any of it. But if you continue to research these things, you see patterns that are consistent. And so that is why when I gave those theories, those are things we've consistently run into with spirits that are still hanging in a location. And so right now, from a scientific standpoint, those are the best answers we have.
Maybe they're in some type of time warp in another dimension or something, and they're trapped there, or their life is just like a recording. It's just going on over and over again. But
that's another thing I was going to say is that the voices that are happening are what's called a residual haunting, where it's basically recorded energy stored within the walls of the building, or the energy's trapped within the building, and at certain times it replays just like a recording would replay. And there are ones in that building that I'm sure were residual. But when Cherie flat out asked a question, and they responded to her as Mrs. Rathman, we knew that wasn't residual.
They responded by the name?
They called her Mrs. Rathman, and it is clear as a bell.
Oh, I would be history. I'm telling you, I'm not brave. But that tells me that there's communication between the living and the dead. And that is, that is really, really scary. Houdini, when he had a pact with his wife. When he told her when he died, he gave her a code. And she had the code. And they were going to communicate after, his death. But all the years that, after, she survived after his death, they never hooked up. But then you hear things like what you're saying or what my daughter is telling me. It opens your eyes up that there's something going on there, especially when they knew your last name. That is really freaky.
When they called her Mrs. Rathman, that did two things for us. We knew it wasn't residual. Residual, you will have no interaction with. They don't know you're there. It's energy replaying like a recording or a record. It's never going to change. Nothing within the environment's going to alter those conditions. If it's an apparition walking down the hall, whatever the case is, it's never going to change. It's going to repeat based off of whatever circumstances are causing it to replay, and nothing in the environment's going to change it. An intelligent haunting is completely different. They're going to be able to understand that you're there, what you're doing. They're going to be able to interact with it. And the fact that she asked that question and they responded to her as Mrs. Rathman, and that was no doubt we weren't dealing with a residual, and that these were clearly intelligent.
Well, how clear was the conversation coming from it?
The fact that they called her Mrs. Rathman?
Yeah, how clear was the audio from it?
Very clear. I mean, to the point where if I played it for an audience, they would not have any problem, or they would not have any conclusion that that's not what it said. I mean, it is that clear.
Well, how did your wife handle that? I mean, when they said that to her, did that scare her? Did she want to quit ghost hunting after that?
No, I mean, we've run into that before, and it's funny because over the years, the first time they called us by name, and even it was just first name at that time, and then it grew over the years, and we can walk into a place where we've never set foot in before, and we can have them call us by name, even if we don't say it. But when we first started ghost hunting, and I commend my wife on this because I think it helped establish the connection, but she would always introduce us. She would say, "I'm Cherie, this is my husband, Tony. We're the Rathmans. We're just here to communicate with you. We're not here to kick you out, hurt you, force you out, anything like that." Well, we did that for years, and we think that helped build the connection when we walk in and try to figure out who's around. It has definitely built the communication up to the point where they feel like, okay, we're okay to talk to these people. They're not going to freak out. We're not going to scare them. And it's opened doors that we never knew that it would. And that layer of respect and talking to them as if they were people, not like the TV show where you go in and you scream at the top of your lungs, you're going to, tell me this. No, I mean, we literally talk to them like if they were standing right in front of us. And that name, our names, grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And I've got hundreds of recordings of walking into areas for the very first time, and they're like, "Hi, Tony," or "Hi, Tony Rathman," or, I have one from the Hotel San Carlos that I was talking about that I walked back in, the one we had investigated over 50 times. I walked into the first hallway, started my recorder, and I said, "I'm back." And they responded, "Welcome home, Tony."
Oh, boy, you're brave. Now, I got to ask you a question. These ghost shows, sure. I'm not going to mention any names, but back over a year, maybe a year and a half ago, I was going to have a guest on who quit one of the shows because what he's told me is that they would go out on a ghost hunt. They would come back to the network and they say, "We didn't get anything." And the network would go tell them, "Go back out and fake it." Because we got to put something on on the show. Right. And
that happens.
But a lot of these shows, they go out there, and I'll be honest with you, you watch them and you go, "I don't know if I believe anything I just seen."
Yeah. There's a big difference between what a true paranormal investigation is like and what's shown on TV. And in order to summarize that in the most clear way that I can, is that television is entertainment. And you can't take that away from television because that's its purpose. That's what it was designed to do. It was designed to entertain people for 30 minutes or an hour. Paranormal investigation has nothing to do with entertainment. Although in a true investigation where you're getting true results, true evidence, that is very entertaining. But one does not control the other. Matter of fact, you can't force paranormal events to occur. You can't. It either happens or it doesn't. So with those variables that I just laid out explains exactly everything that you explained, that they go out, they investigate, they come back and say, "Well, we didn't get anything." Well, television doesn't want to hear that. Television has a budget. Television has ratings to keep up. Television has audiences to keep glued to the station. So, the true paranormal investigation and the research done and everything it takes to complete a true qualified investigation, you'll never see on a paranormal TV show because it's boring. And nobody wants to watch that. They want the oohs and ahs of the end result. And that is why what you just explained happens.
How about things like, I have talked to investigators that, like one investigator, I'm not saying who it is, said they want us out investigating this house and quarters were dropping from the ceiling.
I have actually heard that for multiple different investigations where they were higher end investigations where they were experiencing some major paranormal activity. But yes, I have heard that. There was one, oh my gosh, I think it was maybe 2-3 years ago. I remember reading, and that exact same scenario was occurring. They were asking different questions, and money was dropping from the ceilings. I don't remember if this one was quarters or pennies or what it was, but yes, I've heard that. There was one investigation where, and this was a relatively famous one. I'm not going to say the name, but there was this substance dripping down the walls and the windows, and they couldn't explain where it was coming from. But a scientific breakdown of what the chemical composition of that substance was a combination of gold and uranium.
Oh, wow. Now, I got a question. James, you're out there. Didn't you tell me one time, James, you did an investigation and like blood substance was coming out of the wall?
Yeah, actually, it was 3 years ago, May of 2017. That's when it was. But it was a mirror, a haunted mirror that was been in a hotel room for 50 years. And the guy had it for probably 10 years, and he was having all kind of problems. And, I exercised that mirror and removed it. And when we came back, the wall behind where the mirror was, it looked like blood just rolling down the wall. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. It, and it like you'd wipe it off, and it would just keep coming back. It was extremely bizarre and creepy.
Wow! Hey, James, how you doing?
Hey, Tony.
Now,
James, I've seen ones like that too, where they've got some sort of strange substance coming from an area that there's literally no way. I mean, there were no water pipes, there was no water pipe damage, but yet you've got this substance coming out of a wall in an area where no substance should be. So yeah, I've heard and seen of those as well.
Now, James, did it smell like blood? Did you check it out at all? Touch it and sniff it and all that stuff to figure out if it was blood?
Well, the one thing I won't do is touch it because for certain reasons. But, I did smell it. It actually did smell like blood. I wish I would have took some and would have got it tested, but I didn't do that because, during that investigation, we was trying to film with 3 different devices and recording devices, and it shut everything down. Matter of fact, it even ruined my watch and shut it down. So whatever was there was really, really negative, and it was bizarre. But yeah, it did actually, Gary, it did smell like blood, come to think of it.
Wow. Now, Tony, have you run across anything like that at all? Let's say.
Yeah, I mean, similar situations. I don't think I've come across anything that looks like blood, although I'm sure that's possible. And James, so glad to hear that you didn't touch it. That makes me feel better. But no, not anything that resembles blood to me outside of my own having huge 6-inch scratches down my arm that actually drew blood. It was my own, but not from any other occurrence where it was driven from a wall or ceiling or anything like that. Not a blood substance. No.
Now, how about like smell of death? Have you ever gone into a place and had the odor come and go of the smell of death?
Absolutely, and odors are definitely a big one. The smell of death, I think we've maybe come across 2-3 times in different locations that we've been, but you come across all sorts of smells. And obviously, if it's a smell of death or sulfur or rotting eggs, or chances are, if you come across that, unless there is a natural explanation for it, which does occur sometimes, but if there isn't one, then your guard has to be raised tenfold, because chances are you're up against something negative. But we've had smells anywhere much on the simpler side, from flowers to perfumes, cigarettes, cigars, perfumes, a whole array of devices of different types of smells that we've come across that there's absolutely no logical reason why they're there. So being introduced to smells from a paranormal side is a very common occurrence and happens a lot.
Wow. Now, when we get back, I want to ask you, because we need to take about a 3-minute break here at the top of the hour. I want to ask you, you mentioned scratches. How often, when we come back, I want to know, how often have you been scratched, hit, punched, shoved, whatever, you, your wife, or anything like that? Because I want to know, how much contact you have from the departed. Anyway, you're listening to Tony. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Check our website out, and you can check out Tony about his information, him and his lovely wife, at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. And by the way, you should share us on your media, too. We'll be back here with Tony. We'll be talking more about ghost hunting, spirits, voices, and more on Night Dreams Talk Radio.
living in the strangest of times on my hill, watching while the cities rise from the collapse that we left when the sun beat it down to the valley. Oh, living in the strangest of times, you and me, watching while the cities rise and fall like rain. Seems that I knew you before, but when did I knew you then? Funny how the colors bend when lifetimes start to blend. And we've been spinning mysteries Mandela. Oh, living in the strangest of times, you and me, watching while the cities rise and fall like rain, fall like rain, fall like rain, fall like rain. Into the darkness we fly, keys of all beasts of bay. Who am I? Where are all of my armies of destiny? I guess I can capture every butterfly I see, for I see past my crown how my battlements are coming down. We're living in the strangest of times, you and me, watching while the cities rise and fall like rain. Living in the strangest of times, you and me, watching while the cities rise and fall like rain, 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 they fall like rain, they fall like rain.
If you would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your local radio station, let them know. Tell them to check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com, and thank you.
Across the world, this is probably the best radio station in the world.
You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
And that is me. A big shout out to 1380 AM, The Answer, and 105.3 FM. Breaking news, stimulating talk radio. Anyway, we're back with Tony on Night Dreams Talk Radio. Now, I'm just kind of curious, Tony, like experiences were getting shoved, which, you know, your arm you mentioned was shoved against the gate, scratches and stuff like that. How about your wife, too? Has she been scratched, shoved, punched, or anything like that?
She's been pinched, and I'm not talking lightly. I'm talking hard and in inappropriate places. We were doing an investigation of an old saloon in Payson, Arizona, and there was this spirit there that they called the collector. And this was an old 1800s bordello, and they had experiences with this gentleman, and you know he was supposedly there to make sure money was collected from the ladies of the house, and So my wife and I go to help them out, figure out what's going on there. And this particular spirit just would not leave her alone. In fact, we have an SLS video where he is literally sitting on this chair, and he's the stick figure is big. I mean, this was a big gentleman. And I'm standing on one side of him, and Cherie's standing on the other. And he literally has his elbow up against my chest, like preventing me from moving forward. And he is stroking her hair. Well, after we recorded this, he didn't leave her alone. We had gone outside for a second to take a break, and she screamed at the top of her lungs, spun around, and grabbed her backside, and he had pinched her. And that was the one of 3 times he did it that night. And on the third one, I had to call the investigation off, close down what we were doing, and get her out of there because it was that bad.
Oh, wow. Was she shook up pretty bad on that?
She was. In fact, she was so out of it when we were actually filming. We were trying to do an EVP session, and her eyes were glazed over. She wasn't responding. She was just kind of staring off into the darkness. And I'm like, okay, that's it. We're done. I'm getting you out of here. The bad part is that for the spirit to be causing all these problems, he was draining every battery we had in every piece of equipment. He drained the battery to the bar's security system. And when we went to leave, our car battery was dead as well. Now, whether that was coincidence or not, I don't know, but we ended up having to spend the night and the next morning have the car repaired, new battery put in, even to get home. Was it an old battery in the car or a fairly late battery? No, it was maybe 6 or 7 months old.
That I find that very, I don't believe a 6 or 7 month old battery would fail on its own. If it's going to fail, I mean, I have a massive electronic background, and the way lead acid batteries are, I think something was draining all your sources, plus maybe draining you guys bothly too. That's what that scary part is.
It was definitely doing that to her. And like I said, I being married, I mean, I know her very, very well. I know her actions. I know her how she responds, and she just wasn't herself. And that's when I said, okay, we're done. We're getting out of here. But that was the only time that I remember her being either touched, scratched, pinched. Me in probably 10 or 11 years, I think it's only happened about 6 times. The arm and the gate, that one was, I'll never forget that. That same location where Cherie was being punched, pinched, towards the end of the night, she had asked, she was doing a solo EVP session, and she jokingly said, slap one of the guys or push one of the guys. Well, because we had 2 people filming while they picked me, and I literally was standing by the stairs and got shoved, luckily sideways, not down the stairs, but I stumbled right in front of the cameraman, and it was a hard push. And then the scratches, we had been investigating this particular location multiple times, and it wasn't at the location that this actually happened. It was a couple days later when we were meeting with some friends and they were asking about the investigation. And apparently I was saying more than I was supposed to say. During the investigation, we were given names, what had happened to them, why they were still there. So I was giving that information, and I was actually standing up. And all of a sudden, Cherie says, "Oh my God, you're bleeding." I didn't even feel it happen. And when I looked at my arm, I had 3 6-inch long scratches from about where my elbow bends on the inside of my arm, almost all the way down to my wrist. And they were bleeding quite profusely. And it took days for it to heal. But the funny part was, it wasn't a normal looking scratch. You could see where like fingers or nails or something started, but it had a burned effect. Like they burned the skin as well as just scratched it. I have pictures of it. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And it was very uncomfortable. But I've had rocks thrown at me. I've had
rocks,
rocks. In a basement of a location, this rock came flying out of nowhere. Cherie and I were the only people in it, and it missed me by about 6-7 inches and hit the cement floor in front of me and rolled across. Of course, we ran up to see what it was, and it was maybe an inch and a half size stone that was hurled down the hall.
And was there anybody in the place other than you and your wife?
Nope. We were led into the basement. This was a historical location that actually had underground tunnels, and we were exploring the underground tunnels. Well, the night security person let us in, and he said, when you want to come back up, he goes, just knock on the door. I have to lock this so no guests go down there. So the door was locked. We were the only ones down there. Where this rock came from, how it was hurled, we have no idea.
How about smells when that happened? Did you get any smells like lilac or any type of odors at all that, appeared while this was going on?
I don't remember any particular smells that were present during that time. But let me tell you, when something gets hurled at you or you get pushed or shoved, your mind's pretty much focused on what just happened. And so my ability to probably perceive other events during that were probably compromised. I can also tell you that a lot of the times that these instances occurred were in our early years of paranormal investigating, and I think that we made possibly some mistakes and errors that caused these events probably to occur, because it's probably been 4 or 5 years since I've had that happen.
Well, maybe you were bringing out evil spirits. Now, that brings me to another question. People just getting into ghost hunting, and if they don't have the experience, aren't they asking for getting hurt? Or could these spirits actually kill somebody?
That's a good question. I want to say that, I don't have the answer to that. What I do have the answer to is it depends on what type of spirit. If it is a human spirit, your chances are a lot less severe of being killed. If it is a dark entity, if it is there's so many terminology for what these things are, but do they have the ability to probably do that? Definitely hurt you, no doubt about it. I mean, the difference between an inch rock being thrown, that's probably human spirit. If the kitchen refrigerator flies off the wall and comes flying at you, that's not a human spirit. That's demonic. But where those boundaries lie on what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do, and, after so many years of doing this, Cherie and I believe there are universal laws that spirits are under and have to conform to. I mean, we've gotten so many answers to the craziest questions you've ever asked. But if we ask something like, hey, give me the next week's winning lottery numbers, we don't get answers. And we never do, because, and there's all sorts of other questions that we've asked before, and we just flat out don't get answers to, or they literally tell us that they can't answer, or that they'll get in trouble if they do. And so over the years of accumulating all this, we truly believe that there are universal laws for spirits as well as the collective consciousness, whole other discussions, but that they have to follow. And so whether a human spirit could actually kill you, I'm going to say I don't think so. Not that they don't maybe have the ability to, but the fact that it's, it would be just absolutely unconstitutional, not unconstitutional, but unacceptable for a life to be taken by a spirit. Now, if you're talking negative entities, that's a whole other story in itself, because those rules don't apply. That godlike universal goodness isn't there. And that opens up a whole other range of possibilities of what can happen.
Well, I just think back when you were in the Philippines at that hotel, and that one security guard, you got a picture of it, and you showed it to the other security guard, and he says, that's the guy that used to work here that fell and died. Do you think maybe sometimes that maybe like something like that, when that happened, that they caused that guy to fall?
Well, you never know, because first of all, what we were talking about before, they're still hanging around. I mean, I think he said it had only been 8 months or a year or 16 months. I don't remember how long he told us that it was. But there is a reason they're still hanging around. I mean, let's face it, if I passed away, the last place I'm going to hang out is where I worked. You know, there's a heck of a lot of other better places to be. And so there's something keeping him there.
Well, I disagree with you. I disagree with you. If I worked in a brewery and I was sneaking beer, you know, occasionally, if any place, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come, or if it doesn't even have to be a brewery, it could be all-you-can-eat cafe. I mean, either one of those places, that's where you're going to find me. I'll tell you that.
Very true, and there are exceptions to what I said, no doubt about it. But my internal instinct would be that he's trying to figure something out, and could have something happened that, you know, maybe it was accidental, maybe it wasn't, but there's a reason he's still hanging around. He's trying to solve something or get answers or find answers, and that very well could be. And that's usually one of the main reasons why spirits do hang around, because they're looking for revenge, or they're looking for answers, or they're looking for something that's keeping them from moving on, and that very well could be the case in that situation.
How about people that, let's say, get in a car accident on the side road, run into a tree, and then the relatives put a cross there because that's where their loved one died? Now, is their spirit going to be where they died, or is it going to be at the mortuary, or is it going to be in the cemetery? I mean, have you ever checked any places where people have died, like from car accidents or strange places?
Absolutely. We have done that many times. In fact, we were just in a cemetery in Williams, Arizona, the Williams Cemetery. It's the only one there, and it's a crazy cemetery because it's out in the woods, and it's maybe a half mile out of town. But at night, I mean, it's an ominous feeling because you're literally out in the forest, and there's gravestones everywhere. And I think the latest or earliest gravestone we saw was born 1853, died 1923. So I mean, there's a great age range of stones in there. But are there spirits in that hanging around the cemetery? There are. And we got EVPs. I mean, one of the spirits actually said to me, "I'm a paralegal." And his name was Bill. He gave us his name, and he said, "I'm a paralegal." And it was incredible. And of course, we're searching every gravestone we could find to see if we could find a Bill. He didn't give a last name, so I don't know. But we weren't able to find the stone labeled with William or Bill. But are there spirits in a cemetery? There are. But you know, you got to think about that logically and say, well, why would that be? And I really, truly believe the answer is that there are spirits everywhere. And going to a cemetery, you know, is popular because it's something that's shown on TV. It's got an eerie, ominous sense to it when you go. But we've gotten EVPs in the car traveling 65, 70 miles an hour. In the car.
In the car?
It's just Cherie and I in the car.
Wow.
When it's just Cherie and I, and we're talking, and this other voice comes, no radio on, no nothing. I mean, if we're running a recorder, we don't, there's no background, anything. And this voice is making comments, telling me where to turn on the recording.
That is really scary. I wonder if somebody must have died on that road stretch.
Could be. Or they could just be, you know, jumping in the car when they see us get in the car, see where we're going. But like I said, it's not so much, I don't think, just after doing this for so long, that it's necessarily a particular place. They are around constantly. And one of the reasons why I know that is because the very first time this happened, we were we had investigated, like I said, the Hotel San Carlos here in Phoenix like 50 sometimes. Well, then we went to the Bel Air house in Ohio, and we investigated that. And one of the voices that we consistently heard in the Bel Air house showed up on a recording we were doing at the Bel Air house. And his exact words were, "Hello, my old friends." And we're like, and Cherie's like, "Friends? What's he talking about?" I'm like, "Cherie, do you know that voice? That's from San Carlos." And then I played a couple of other ones where we had him. She's like, "Oh my God, it's the same voice." So they have the ability to travel. They can move, like I said, their own free will. And now we run the Copper Canyon Paranormal Research Center, and we have a spirit there named Michael. And he has followed us to multiple other locations, and we've heard his voice and him say stuff, warn us of trouble, and it's the same voice. And it is from him at the Phelps Dodge Hospital.
Now, how aren't you worried that, have you had any of them follow you home? And if so,
oh, yes.
how do you get rid of them? I mean, I could imagine, I hate to say it, on a Saturday night, you and your wife get romantic and you have somebody saying, "Can I join in?"
You know what? I don't even know if I should say this, but we've had an instance where we were being romantic, and Cherie had thrown her cell phone off to the side, but she was recording. She was recording a video before I had come into the room, and I came into the room, and of course I started kissing her, and she just threw the phone. So there wasn't actual video; it was just audio. But there was a voice that showed up when I went back and said, "Oh my God, your phone's recording." And I said, "Well, I'm going to listen to it. Let's see if anybody." And sure enough, there were voices, and they were making comments about what was going on, and it was a little unsettling.
I bet it caused some problems for a couple weekends after that. I know in my case, my wife, it would probably be about a year. So if they follow you home, what do you do to get rid of them? I wouldn't put it this way. I wouldn't want to be in the shower and somebody says, "Hey, pass me the soap." I mean, I don't want no spirit in my house. I mean, it's bad enough with the dogs around here and running around. I don't need a spirit. I mean, how do you get rid of these spirits?
Well, it depends on the type of spirit. We know we have spirits here, and the reason we know it, when I first moved into this house probably 10 years ago, I mean, the house probably wasn't more than 7, 8 years old, and there was nothing here. When we first started testing it to see if, when we got no EVPs, we got no EMF disturbances, nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And then over the last 10 years of all the places we've been, the activity has increased here 100-fold. But I also do instrumental transcommunication, and I've built,
okay, 13, let's stop. Explain to the listeners what that means.
Instrumental transcommunication is a way to communicate with entities, but it allows you to hear them speak immediately. If you do an EVP session, most of the time you can't hear the EVPs with your own ear. They leave the EVP on the recorder, and then you have to go back and review the recording to hear what was said. Instrumental transcommunication uses a method that amplifies the voice being projected. Now, there's lots of different forms of doing that. There's spirit boxes, things like the SP7, the SP11, and there's a whole array of other ones. But then there's devices that go above and beyond that to try to clean that up. There's different sort of apps that are supposed to allow spirit communication. So basically you ask a question, and then you wait for the response. And, you know, there's a lot of people that say that you're picking up stray radio waves, you're picking up shortwave, you're picking up walkie-talkies, you're picking up a baby monitor signal. Okay, well, I don't know any baby monitor or radio station that's, hey, calling me Tony Rathman. I don't know any radio station in all of Arizona that speaks in Tagalog, because Cherie's had messages come through in Tagalog here in Phoenix, and there are no Tagalog radio stations, and I doubt anyone speaking Tagalog over a walkie-talkie or shortwave radio or whatever the case may be. But it's a method of being able to receive answers, and how it fully works, well, that's still to be determined. You're not broadcasting your voice out. You're speaking in a normal tone of voice. So is this a half duplex system where they can hear you and then they're able to send back their response through an electronic radio wave? I don't know. I don't have those answers yet. It's part of what we're trying to research and figure out the answer to, but it does work.
Again, I commend you and your wife, to put this up. I mean, I'm wondering how many guests do you have at your house at any given time?
Well, at any given time, I can't answer that, but I can tell you my wife was giving the dog a bath, and when she got the dog out of the tub, the dog just went crazy and started running around the house. Well, she thought it was funny. So, of course, she picked up a video recorder and was recording the dog running around, trying to jump on furniture when she's trying to, Rathman settle him down. And when I went back, she goes, "Oh, yeah, I taped the dog. He freaked out when he got out of the tub." I said, "Oh, I want to see it." Well, I started listening to it, and there is voice after voice after voice. She's the only one in the house. I had gone out to run errands when she gave the dog a bath. Only one here. There was no TV, no radio on. And there are male voices, there are female voices. I would say there's probably 6 or 7 voices on the recording. They are calling the dog by name. They're telling the dog to settle down, behave. They're making comments about what the dog is doing. It was unbelievable.
Wow. And did you, by any chance, recognize any of the voices? Were they clear enough to, to recognize, did it sound like, how can I say it, computer-generated voices, or did it sound like actual human voices?
No, it is actual human voices, and they're in a disembodied tone. And when I say disembodied tone, anyone who's done experience with EVPs or ITC know that a disembodied tone has no direction from which you can identify it's coming from. It's not, most of our high-end digital recorders, you can, if you are on the left side of the machine, you say something, the machine can identify which direction it's coming from. A disembodied voice, you can't identify the direction. It just literally fills the entire area. It has a hollow sound to it. Sometimes they're in whisper. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes the words are as clear as if someone was actually speaking into a recorder. But obviously the process from which it gets there is different, because whoever's speaking does not have a throat or a larynx or the ability to create human speech. But yet the voice is absolutely human speech. If I was to play these for anybody, nobody would doubt that this is conversation, that it's human conversation, and that these words are being pronounced not from computer electronics or an electronic speech to text. This is regular human speech.
Well, it tells me, animals, I really feel that because, they don't see, like, especially dogs and cats, they don't see colors, supposedly. But I think maybe because of the way their eye is and not seeing colors, maybe they can see things that me, you, and your wife, and even James can't see. And that's what freaks them out. Because I know my oldest daughter, when she was a little kid, she used to sit in the front room. And we had, at that time, I think, 3 cats. And she'd be talking to her imaginary friend, which was kind of getting annoying because I figured, this is going on long enough. But one day I noticed these cats, all 3 of them would be looking at a object that wasn't there. Their eyes and head were fixed in a certain part of the room intensely, while this was going on. They weren't looking at her while she was talking. They were looking at, well, whatever she was talking at. That's what I found strange. Now, Tony, we need to take the last break for the show. So we'll be back on this one here in about 3.5 minutes. So if you want to get a cup of Jabba or whatever, we'll be back with Tony. I got some more questions to ask you. And if anybody has any questions on chat, I'll relay them to Tony. And you can certainly ask a question, and I'll ask with Tony. You're listening to Tony. It's the only thing I noticed here tonight, you don't have your wife on you with you like you did last time. But anyway.
No, she was busy tonight.
Okay, anyway, we'll be back in about 3.5 minutes with Tony. You're listening to me, Gary, on Night Dreams Talk Radio.
I was sitting by a campfire in the desert with some friends, talking about the world, how the sagas never end. Checking out the starlight, looking at the sky, laughing and then joking how the sun had made us high. Shadows rose around us, our sun began to fade. Stars glowed above us in the lovely night God made. Talking about the cosmos, where destiny might send us. We saw the light and learned that night of alien agendas. We heard about reptilians, Nordics and the Great, how they're pro and con and neutral in a universal fray. Some would help us prosper on a higher cosmic plane. Others would derail us in the dark and hostile rain. Shadows rise around us, our sight begins to fade. But hope surrounds us in this lonely world God made. Thinking about the cosmos, where destiny might send us. You can see the light and unlearn about these alien agendas. Andromeda's dark route where like children fly with ease. In the outer constellations, Earth's nations fly non-stop. Behind the cosmic curtain there are certain hostile plots. Shadows surround us, our sight has been betrayed. When love is all around us in this universe God made. Thinking about the cosmos, where destiny might send us. You might think twice about what might be alien agenda.
Good evening. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio with Gary Anderson. And here's Gary.
And we are back with Tony. I tell you what, I got to ask you some more questions. Have you ever gone out and brought a medium, a psychic, or any of that with you during any of these investigations? If so, what happened?
Absolutely, we have. In fact, anytime we go out and do a public home investigation, I mean, usually it's just Cherie and I. There's two other members of our Entity Voices team. Sometimes it's all four of us. One of our members is, well, he calls himself a sensitive, but he's able to pick up and know when something's around. And we've also worked with other psychics. I help Jeanette Lucas out on a regular basis on cases, and I've done multiple things in conjunction with her as well. But there's times we'll go to a home, and when we run into something that we know is much more dangerous than a human spirit, whether it be a family member or whatever the case may be, if it's a darker entity, yes, we will call in psychics and mediums. We've got a list of people after, doing this many years that are all connections for us. We've got demonologists, spirit removers. We've got basically an entire network of people that we need to do this appropriately. But yes, there's been times where the psychic's been able to say, hey, there's and this is a perfect example. We were actually down in the Phelps Dodge Hospital, and this person said, there's a woman in here. And of course we're recording. We're always recording, both audio, digital recorders, video cameras, night vision cameras. 5 seconds after he said that, not even 5 seconds, 2 seconds after he said there's a woman in here, this woman's voice came through loud as if she was standing right next to us, completely human-sounding voice. She said, you're right. And, it just shows that, my wife and I are not psychics, not mediums. We don't have that ability. But that produces additional evidence and leads to be able to follow up on while we're investigating. And when this person said there's a woman in here, and 2 seconds on the recording, you hear this woman's voice clear as a bell say, you're right. We were able to follow up on that. We were able to ask her who she is. She gave us her name. Her name was Mary. And we've got her to communicate multiple times after that, trying to give additional information. Now, the thing about spirit communication, though, is that it is difficult because it takes energy for them to do that, and they're limited in their responses to some degree. And, sometimes you got to make, 10, 12 trips to get the answers you're looking for. They don't all come at once. It's not like having a phone conversation, but they do come, and they are there. And mediums have been, and psychics have been a real help in many of the cases that we've done.
What I find interesting, I always thought if there is a hereafter, you pass on, you go through the tunnel, you see all the bright lights, you see relatives, and then you see Jesus or God or an angel, and that's where you end up. But it scares me to find out how many people aren't going into the tunnel, if there is a tunnel, and they're here with us, walking among us. It makes me wonder how many places that or how can I say it, you think you're living alone, and you might have a dozen people living with you, and they're not even relatives.
That is so true. And that is probably the one aspect of life that we can, without a shadow of a doubt, prove that you are truly never alone. Even when you think you are, you're not. And they can come and go as they want. And, can that be fearful? Yeah, it can, because, I'm talking to you on the phone right now over the radio. Who knows who's standing right in front of me? I don't know. I can't see them unless they say something. There are times I can hear what they say with my own ears, and we've got, can't even tell you, terabytes of data where I said, oh my God, Tree, did you hear that? They just said, and sure enough, I'll back up the recording, and yeah, it's there, exactly what I heard. But yeah, that can be an uneasy thing. But when you get used to it, and that's why it doesn't, freak us out like it used to. But the thing about the paranormal is you never know what you're going to run into, and there's always something different. And until you can figure out what you're dealing with, that's really the big question to try to determine how to handle it. But yeah, they're everywhere. Like I said, when we were in the car and got EVPs doing 70 miles an hour down the highway, if they can get into the car, they can get in there anywhere.
Well, I still remember a friend of mine who was a deputy sheriff in Missouri, and she bought a house, and the house she bought was, no one ever lived in it before she and her original husband moved into it. And they had like 37, 39 acres. But she told me that weird things were going on, like they would be downstairs. They would be downstairs, and all of a sudden they hear the bedroom door slam upstairs. Or they would be upstairs or in the front room, and they would hear the refrigerator open and close on its own when they're the only ones there,
right?
Or only when she was there. And then one experience she had, she was out in her pasture working, and she saw a kid, though what she thought was a kid, cutting through the woods. Like I said, she had 37 or 39 acres, and it was the entity or whatever it was walking towards her. She swore he was wearing a hoodie, but she didn't recognize anything else, and she was watching him. Now, where that person was walking towards her, there was no way they could have ran off. In other words, she would have seen if they took off to the right, left, or reversed, because it was a big area. She took her eyes off for maybe a few seconds and looked, and it was gone.
Gone.
No footprints, no nothing. And it was muddy, actually, out by the horse pasture. And there was no footprints. But that was, I would think, would be kind of, scary. But then I did some research after I talked to her about it. In Missouri, during the Civil War, there was a lot of people who died. And, died everywhere. And who knows if they were buried, not buried, or whatever.
You are absolutely right. And that's when an investigation is done, that's one of the first things we try to determine and decipher. And because everything can hold energy, the land itself is going to hold energy from, like an instance you just explained, wars, deaths, tragic events. The land itself can hold energy, and these things can replay on a residual process or on an intelligent process. The building can hold energy, can hold traumatic events, thoughts, suicides, whatever the case may be. Objects can hold energy, whether it was somebody's favorite object and they still want to be around it. There is such an array of theory about how this can all happen. You can have geological and magnetic anomalies that happen in certain areas. California is a great example where you've got these huge high magnetic anomalies around faults and around certain canyons out in California, where they have a huge array of paranormal activity occurring. Those situations and scientific data showing higher EMF levels, showing different pressure changes, those can either be the cause or the energy used for the paranormal activity that's occurring.
Interesting. Now, Lloyd has a question for you. Do either you or your wife have any abilities of any kind?
Well, when you say abilities, I'm assuming his question is referring to psychic or no. The answer to that question is we don't. At least not that we're aware of. We don't claim to be psychic. We don't claim to have any special abilities. The only special ability that I would say we have is that we have built a trust with the afterlife for them to feel free to actually communicate with us without them thinking that we're going to freak out, get scared, panic. And because they know we've been doing this, and they know that I, do instrumental transcommunication. I mean, I use my EVOX daily, turn it on to let them speak and let them communicate. It builds a trust factor. But as far as any supernatural or no, I would never claim to have that, and neither does my wife. We just have experience doing this, and we know how and when, and we took the right steps in the beginning to get them to trust us to communicate.
Very, very interesting. Now, how about, have you gone to anybody's house, for example, that has had an angry spirit or a spirit that's not happy? Somebody maybe, I hate to use the word, put a gun to their head and shot themselves and killed themselves in, like a child or anything in a house, and they're being haunted or anything. Have you run across things like that?
many, 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 many times. We get calls and communication weekly for people saying, "Hey, I have this going on in my house. I don't understand what's going on." Of course, then we'll go and investigate. But, the ones that come to the top of my mind with what you just asked, we were at a house that a woman owned. She was living by herself. She was claiming she's seeing shadow figures. She's hearing voices. So we went over to investigate. The EMF levels were off the chart. The voices that we captured, along with a shadow figure on a night vision camera we left running, clearly indicated to us that there was something there and it was not happy. Well, to make a long story short, after everything that we've done and everything that we did to help and to capture, we ended up clearing the house. We did an entire array of cleansing processes, including inviting a demonologist to come and make sure that, it was totally cleared. Well, at the end of one of the digital recorders, as we were wrapping up, and I was saying to this woman that your house is now cleaned, the doors have been salted, the windows have been salted, and people, like you were asking before about people wanting to get into it and knowing, doing it right is so important, because if you do it wrong, you're going to make things worse. Well, I was explaining to her that it should be clean now, they should be out, and on the digital recorder, this male voice came through, left a message, and cursed me out, said, "F you, Tony, we're going to get you."
He's going to get you?
Yeah. The next sentence he said is, "We're going to get you."
How long ago was that one?
Well, that was probably a year and 3 months ago.
Well, so far he hasn't come and got you, thank God.
No. And the difference between a human spirit and what they have the power to do, and there's some flexibility in that, because you have some very evil people, and whether they're alive as you run into good people and you run into bad people, that transfers over into the spirit world. Well, they weren't happy with the fact that I kicked him out and cleansed the house, and he was verbally expressing that. But it turned out, like 6 months after we cleared it, the woman came forward and showed us some documentation. She had researched the history of the house, and took months, but she found that a gentleman had committed suicide in the house. And of course, that makes perfect sense, because we know from experience that if you do commit suicide, you're stuck. And I don't know if that's what's considered to be, the in-between earth and heaven, if that's purgatory, and you're sent there or you're going to stay there until you mentally come to terms with what you did. I don't know. I mean, those are all answers the paranormal still trying to answer. But this person was there. But now the question I have, and that's the thing about the paranormal, is for every answer you get, there's 100 more questions. If I forced him out of the house and he was stuck there for something he did, where's he now?
Yeah, probably in your bedroom, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, probably in my house, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, move over on the couch. I want to watch that show with you guys. But how about demons? Have you run across, somebody that never existed as a human? Have you ran into any demons on any of these investigations?
Yes, we have. Very few, though. I mean, it's not like the television shows where you see where every place they go, they run into a demon. It doesn't work like that. But we did run into one in the house we did in Las Vegas. This thing was so vicious. The second we walked in the front door, the owner of the house asked us if we wanted a cup of coffee. And of course, we had driven 4 or 5 hours from Phoenix to Vegas to help her out. So we sat down at the table to have the cup of coffee before we got started. This growl came from the far corner of her living room that was so loud and so vicious sounding. And my wife said, "Do you have a dog?" And she goes, "I don't have any pets." And she goes, "You heard that?" I'm like, "Yeah, we heard that." She goes, "Yeah, I hear that often." Well, then we did a full investigation. I mean, we caught these, I don't even know what they are. We caught these white white misty looking objects falling from the ceiling, starting out like a pin drop and turning into this figure and flying across the room at the camera. We had the growl on recording, and then we did a spirit box session. And the responses that came through were so vicious. They were calling me by name. They were telling me to get out. They were telling me, oh my gosh, just the worst things and vulgar statements. And we knew this was on the negative side. And so we went through Archbishop James Cloud, and he recommended a gentleman to us, and we were able to get him to come with us and exercise at home.
Interesting. Now, Lloyd has another question. He goes, how many clients actually did not have a haunting, but maybe had mental problems and thought they were being haunted?
You know, that's a great question, and that does happen a lot. And that is probably the biggest challenge and hurdle to an investigator, is to take the information that they're giving you and determining what sounds factual, what sounds made up, and what sounds maybe possibly some sort of mental or medical prescription-based thinking. And we have run into that more times than I'd like to count. And, you know, it's a challenge. You have this client, you want to put faith into what they're saying so that you can use that information to determine how to properly investigate without stirring things up. But yeah, there have been more times than I can count where all of a sudden the story's not making sense. The information given isn't following typical patterns that we have seen year after year after year after year. And then, you know, later we find out that they skipped the medication, or they stopped seeing, you know, a doctor, and that's not enough in itself to determine that that's what the issue is. But because these are private home investigations, I don't want to go into details, just because these are private people, and I don't want to, you know, get into detail on what those circumstances were. But yes, that's a great question, and that does happen a lot. And it's our responsibility to try to determine what seems factual based on our experience and what seems a little bit off from that norm. And that's difficult to do because there are no defined anything within the paranormal, and it's up to us to say, okay, yeah, this sounds like something we need to go check out, or no, this seems suspicious.
Now, I got to ask you a question. Somebody who wants to go and start out in ghost hunting, now, what would you recommend? Should they start out just buying something or using their cell phone? Should they do it by themselves and start off with maybe cemeteries or something place like that? Or should they join a group and learn it the right way? If the group is doing it the right way.
Without a doubt, if somebody without prior experience is curious, wants to try it for themselves, find a group. Find a group that's willing to bring you in, let you go with them, because then you're not spending a fortune in equipment, because I can tell you the stuff's not cheap. But you can figure out what equipment you like. You can use it with them on investigations. You've got qualified people. Now, granted, make sure the group is qualified, because I can tell you in the last 10 years, they've popped up out of nowhere. There are more paranormal groups out there today than ever before. And some of them claim to have experience, but, you know, it's minimal. And so make sure it's a qualified group. Make sure they've been around for a while. Make sure that when they tell you, hey, yeah, come with us, you know, we'll show you how to use the equipment. We'll show you what to listen for. We'll show you the steps to take on using each one. But that would definitely be my first recommendation, is to go with people that have done this for a while. You can learn from them. They can teach you. They can warn you when things are not going like they should be, and they can warn you when they literally say, "We're done. We're walking out of here. This isn't right." And the other one would be to do some research, do some reading, look up on the internet. Now, the internet is great because it's accessible, but you got to make sure what you're reading is from a valuable source, and that can be at times very, very tricky. But definitely get involved with a group that has a history of doing it, and that would be my absolute first step to being able to determine if you want to continue doing it, if you will be able to use equipment that you know, hey, I might want that. No, I don't like that one. I don't want that one. But the equipment aspect of it is relatively simple. I mean, if you have a night vision camera, a digital recorder, an EMF meter, those three items are your first set to start. There are hundreds of thousands of items out there, and each ones have different purposes and can be used for different things. And there's a lot of great stuff out there. But from a beginner standpoint, to learn, get with a group that's got some equipment they'll let you use when they go with you on an investigation, and that would be my recommendation for the best way to learn.
Well, I had a group on 2 years ago. They contacted me. They led me on to believe that they were a major ghost hunting group. Okay, I got him on the show, him and a lady, and I was talking to him for maybe 5 minutes, and they weren't so much interested in going out and doing ghost hunting. They kept talking during that first 5 minutes. Well, we want to get on a cable channel with our own show. And I'm sitting and getting frustrated, okay, because that's not what they were brought on for. And then I had enough nerve. I got upset. I said, well, how many ghost hunts have you been on? And she spoke up and she goes, we went on one ghost hunt at somebody's house. And I said, well, can you tell me about it? She goes, yeah, we charged them $800. We investigate. What? They charge $800 to investigate. And then I started thinking, okay, this isn't right here. Something is wrong. And
no, and charging for ghost hunting, I mean, you can't do that. And for anybody who doesn't understand why you can't do that, I mean, people say, well, I got to travel, it takes gas, I got to buy the equipment. Well, regardless of all that, the one reason you can't charge for a ghost investigation is for legalities. If you, for whatever reason, ended up in a court, there is no paranormal evidence that's going to hold within a court of law, and you are going to lose. So my advice to that group or any other group who thinks they're going to charge for paranormal investigations, don't do it. You will set you up to be sued, and you will lose.
Well, not just that. My concern is when I confronted her, and the guy then hung up when I confronted him, I said, aren't you worried since here you want to get a ghost hunting show on cable TV with only one experience? You went and did an investigation. Weren't you worried that maybe you could have stirred something up for these poor people that paid you? And then when I said that, click, he went. And then I couldn't take it any longer, and I cut her off. I mean, there is people like that out there. I hate to say it. Just like there's some psychics out there that I see on Facebook. Well, hey, I got a deal today. I'll give you a reading for $50. Now, I've had a few psychics on my show, and I'll tell you, I had one that claimed that you remember Casey, where the little child they found dead, and it was in the news for months and months and months.
Oh, Casey Anthony.
Right. This one ghost hunter claimed, I'm the one that found the child. I told the police exactly where the child was. And I said, oh, really? I got a copy on my computer. I'm reading it right now from the police report when they found the child. It was a postal worker.
Wow.
And,
and that's one of that's the other major problem within the paranormal community today is that, one, unexperienced investigation groups claiming that they've got all this knowledge, and then going to someone's house. I mean, the whole purpose of helping other people who may not know what's going on is to have that experience to be able to bring to them and say, okay, here's what we think you have happening. Here's what the next steps we can do. If you don't have that experience, you are absolutely right. You run the risk of that group making things 10 times worse than what they were originally calling about and concerned about. And that happens a lot. We've been called to places where they said, well, we had this other group in here, and they, then they'll explain to us what they did, and we'll be like, no, that's not the right way to handle it. But that happens a lot. And then the worst of it is what you're talking about, where they want a show. I mean, it's probably any paranormal investigator's dream, because let's face it, this isn't a job. This is a passion or a hobby or something that you're trying to find answers to an unknown. Being able to do that and get paid for it, anybody would want to do that who's involved in the paranormal. But if that's your sole purpose, stop right now, because chances are that's never going to happen. And the second thing is you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Oh, I see that. Not just in ghost hunting. If you go on Facebook, for example, you see all these people, especially now, since, nobody's working, all of a sudden they're becoming talk show hosts. A lot of them. Now, I'm going to tell you, I worked a lot of radio stations through the years, okay, where I got a regular paycheck each week or each 2 weeks or once a month or whatever, depending on the station. I worked hard to get where I'm at, and I was retired, for 10 years when a friend of mine, Art Bell, called me up and said, hey, you need to get back on the air. Now's the time to do it because the internet radio is the future. And I've been experimenting for the last 3 years. We got 1 million listeners, but I have all these other people, right, that think they are a talk show host. So it's the same thing that you're facing with, that you hear all over the whole paranormal. It's the same way.
Right, and part of the influence of that is the internet, because there are so many ways to communicate. I mean, anybody can get online and do a podcast or, a YouTube Live or a Facebook Live. In fact, we started one a couple of months ago called Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence, and we take investigators and do an interview with them, and then we review some of their best paranormal clips. It's actually been a very big success for us, but it's on Wednesday nights. It's a great show. But anybody has the ability to do that today. And so you get a lot of people putting stuff together, and we've seen thousands of them. Some of them are okay. Some of them really lacking in the ability to bring forth information that's accurate and discussions that are intelligent and give facts. And so it's the same deal, because the technology has advanced so much, and you can literally create almost anything today. People are doing it left and right, and it does take away from that sort of authoritative experience level of information that you used to get years ago.
Oh, it does. But, thank God I got a huge following. But that's because some people still recognize my name, and we're on radio stations besides the internet. But the point is, I have 44 years of doing paranormal talk radio. My brain absorbed a lot in 44 years. Now, I've never gone ghost hunting. Well, I did one time. I went to the cemetery one time with one of my sons with a recorder. I came back. I was so happy. I was excited. I heard a little kid talking and laughing, and I go, oh, I picked this up. And I was, so happy. Then I decided, well, I'm going to go back and check the cemetery out again. And then I walked back all the way to the back of the cemetery. There was maybe 100 feet, 75 feet of, fir trees. And then there was a fence. And then there was a slide, a swing set, and kids playing.
That happens. I mean, that's why it's so important to, at least you went back and you determined the cause of it, though. And clearly it wasn't paranormal, but you did the secondary research to take away any doubts. And so that was an excellent move as far as being able to determine whether what you had was truly paranormal or not. But yeah, without that experience and without doing the correct follow-up steps to make sure that what you have is paranormal. And today, there's groups that catch anything, and they claim it to be paranormal. I mean, I can't tell you how many orb videos I've seen. I'm like, that's dust.
Yeah,
That's dust reflecting in your IR light. And and then they say, well, dust doesn't move like that. Well, yeah, it does.
Yeah,
but,
orbs from a porch light. All kinds of weird things. I will, if you can hang on for another 20 minutes, I would like to have you on, would you?
Sure.
Okay. I think I told you this before. During a break, I took a break for quite a few years and got out of broadcasting because I got burned out. And I managed a professional camera store chain of 3 stores. And one of the main store was built in Tacoma. And it was in a building that was built in the 1870s, 1880s. It originally was 12 or 13 stories, something like that. In the late 60s, it was unsafe. So they took off all but, I think it was left 4 stories left. So they removed quite a few stories. And, I had employees that, well, put it this way, the basement used to be a bar in the 1880s, all the way through, I think, to the 30s or 40s. And
how cool.
It wasn't a bar when I came there, but we used...
Well, no, of course not, but the history is there for it, so that...
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
And the thing is, where it was located, ships would come in, port, because it is a port, and they had a lot of strange things. Well, here's what I found out. When I was there, I also, because I have a massive electronic background, I was one of the first people to get a digital camera from Nikon. That tells you back in the 90s, late 90s or whatever it was. And I was cleaning the sensors for people. People come in, they buy a digital camera, they get dust spots on them because back then you had to clean the sensors. And so I would have to be there late at night cleaning them because during the day we'd run the air conditioners, the heating unit, and dust was everywhere. So I had to wait 2 or 3 hours after we closed. Then I would go in the repair shop and clean the sensors. And it was really weird, Tony. I would be in there. And that it probably took a week or two being there late at night before it started happening. Now, the repair shop in my office was on one part of the store. And then if you walked around the hallway and went onto the main showroom, there used to be the old staircase from when it was a hotel, back in the 1870s, 80s.
Right.
And it would go up to the 2nd floor, then the 3rd floor, and to what was left of the 4th floor. I'd be there sometimes like 11, 12 o'clock at night. Now, I would double lock the doors so I know there was nobody could come in. Not even the owners couldn't come in unless they called me and said, hey, let me in. I'd be down there cleaning the sensors, and you know what I would hear? Footsteps. First, it was like one person going up the stairs, and you'd hear the stairs creaking, and you'd actually hear the thump of the feet going up the stairs. Now, the first time that happened, I go, okay, something happened. How could somebody get in here? Or I thought maybe somebody hid and was going to rob the place during the night because we had, $1 million worth of camera inventory in there.
Equipment, right.
I'd run out there with my gun, and I'd look, and it was nobody there. I'd go all the way to the 2nd story, 3rd, 4th floor, nobody there. I'd go down the basement, nobody was there. At one point, I even called the police. They surrounded the place. They came in. They couldn't find anything. Then it started progressing, where all of a sudden I'd be in there, and I hear like multiple people going up the stairs. And then I started getting kind of freaked out. And then towards the end, when I decided I can't work here anymore, I heard people going up the stairs, both male and female, with muffled talking. Talking, you can't understand what they're saying, but you hear that the voices.
You know it's voice, but you can't make out the words of the sentence. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And, the thing is, I would hear the creaking going all the way up the stairs. Now, to make things worse, that we used to hire people that were, maybe in the military, because Tacoma is right next to McCord and Fort Lewis, so it's a major area. Bangor, the nuclear submarine base, is like 20 some miles away. So we'd hire, part-time salespeople that were in the military or retired from the military. And when I came there, when I first started working there, I would ask one of the salesmen, "Will you go down and get a projection screen? This gentleman wants to buy one." And the guy looked at me and goes, "I'm not going down in the basement." And I go, "Well, the guy wants to buy one. Would you go?" "I'm not going down the basement." I would get mad. Okay, because the guy sat there and told me, "I'm not going down there. It's haunted." I'd fire the guy right on the spot. I said, "Go up there, get your paycheck, you're done." Okay? Well, that happened probably 5 or 6 times over a 10-year period, or maybe even more. And then one day, towards the very end, when I decided I'm quitting, I'm out of here, I had a different employee. He was a chief bosun mate in submarines. In fact, his best friend, you remember the USS Treasure that sunk?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he was scheduled to be on that sub, but he was sick, his friend went on it. And he had a guilt complex like you wouldn't believe. And I said, "Would you go down there? We need inventory for the other store, box it up, and I'll take it out there." And he goes, "I'm not going down there. It's haunted." Well, I couldn't afford to fire the guy because at that point we used to have 13 employees. I think I was down to like 6. I went down there, and I'm walking down there, and all of a sudden I smell lilac, and it got cold.
Ooh.
And okay, then
two signs something's about to happen.
Okay, the only thing I should be smelling is the sewer pipes down there. But if sewer pipes smell like lilac, then hey, Tacoma has a sweet smell. But okay, I backed up, and it wasn't gone. I mean, the smell was gone. That cold spot was gone. Nothing happened for about a week. I go down there another time to get some inventory, and I'm walking down this long, path between all these racks of merchandise, right? Was a long walk, maybe like about 100 feet long. And I'm walking down there, and somebody punches me really hard in the shoulder. It really hurt. Ooh. So I doubled up my fist, and I figured, okay, it has to be the guy. And I got ready to punch him, and I swung around. There was nobody there. Nobody.
Oh, so you felt that feeling too, then, of being punched or pushed or. For the years, though, I blocked it out and said, okay, this is because everybody for like 10 years is saying this place is haunted. I'm imagining this. That's what I said to myself. Now, I got mad. The next day, I go up there and I tell the owners, I was the general manager. And they said, well, if you're going to quit, give us a couple months to replace you. I'm not coming to work here anymore. That's it. And I quit. Now, I did research with the Tacoma News Tribune with their old records. I found out in the about 1890s, there was a prostitute on the 4th floor was murdered and cut up in pieces and put in a trunk. Oh, wow.
So that kind of made me, And then more research, I found out there was a shooting there in the 40s in the bar downstairs in the tavern, and somebody got killed.
Well, that's an amazing story, Gary, and clearly shows the reason for the paranormal activity that's happening. But what I liked best about the story, and it brings up a question, is when you went down the last trip into the basement where you had smelled the lilac smell and it got cold. My question is, what were you feeling at that moment? Were you scared? Did you feel like you were maybe terrified? Was there a sense of panic to you? Or were you calm?
No, there was a sense of panic for a second because I've been down in that basement thousands of times. And this is the first time anything like that ever happened. And again, I said to myself, this must be because I hear about it upstairs from the other salesman all the time that the place is haunted. Maybe it's affecting me emotionally, psychologically, that I'm falling into what I thought was their game. Now, here's the thing. After I left, I hate to say it, photography stores started dying because of digital cameras and going online and, B&H and all these other people. The store failed. Now, have you ever seen the collapse of the Narrows Bridge video?
Yes.
Okay, the owner of the store died was the one who started that store, who filmed that collapse of the Narrows Bridge.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know. It was just a weird experience I never wanted to go through ever again. But here's what happened. After I left there, I did a little bit more research. And I think a couple years later, I was driving by the area and I said, you know what? There's a big insurance or title company. It was a title company moved in there. And I figured, you know what? I'm just going to stick my head in there and see what it looks like. And there was a receptionist there. And I said, I used to work here for about 10 and a half years. And she goes, oh, you mean when it was a camera store? I go, yeah. And I said, strange things used to happen here. She looked at me, turned bright red, and she goes, this place is haunted.
Yep, because it usually doesn't end. And what that time frame is, I mean, I'm not sure when it ceases or if it ever does cease. Well, we have been in similar situations where we've been in locations that, the stories have been told for 100 years, and yet we can go there and we can get the names of the people that they say are there, and we can get them to communicate, and we can catch stuff on the FLIR camera, and it's been 100 years. I mean, how long are they stuck there? Those are all questions that, at some point, my wife and I are hoping to get some answers to. But yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I don't know. I don't know which would be worse, running for that experience again or being abducted from a UFO and an alien. I have no idea. Now, one of our listeners said there's zero science to back up. Well, it's just as much science to back it up as there is ufology or demonology or anything else. I mean, unless you've gone through something, okay, and gone through it, people are going to be skeptical. That's normal.
Yep, that's so true. And part of the problem in the paranormal is that people go out and investigate, and with the methods that they use, it falls within what's considered a pseudoscience. And the real way to get paranormal into the true science is to use methods that science can explain. Now, if you look at science, though, science is limited to some degree in what we can explain, because science is based on our earthly senses foundation of what the world is like. But if you go back, 100 years, 80 years, and you look at something like a lunar eclipse, I mean, that was considered paranormal because people didn't understand. Well, maybe it was longer than that. I shouldn't have said 80 or 100 years. It was longer than that. But regardless, it was looked at as a paranormal event because, oh my God, the moon's being blocked out. How is that happening? Or the sun's being blocked out. How is that happening? Well, science has caught up, and now there's an explanation for it. And now nobody thinks a solar or a lunar eclipse is paranormal because, we've got the science has the facts to explain it. That is where the paranormal field needs to go, so we can change it from a pseudoscience to true science and be able to explain, hey, how are apparitions forming? Is this a proton emission? Is this, and we're not there yet, but that's the goal.
Well, I'm hoping someday, both on ufology and the paranormal, a lot of these answers can be answered because, you know what? I'm still confused, and I think I'm going to be confused to the day. I hate to say it. I don't want to wait till I die to find out if there is a rebirth or is this it? I wish I could, know the answer. No, I don't want to have a near-death experience. I don't want to find that out that way.
Right. Well, I couldn't agree more. And that is our passion, why we continue to do this on a daily basis and have for, as long as we have. But it's that wanting to know. And once that gets into your heart and soul, it's hard to put it down. And so we are always searching for for answers. But like I said, the problem is for every answer you get, there's 100 more questions behind it. So it's a never-ending process. And we'll just continue working at it and hopefully be able to add something to the paranormal community that either isn't known or that we've discovered or something in between, but to help that process of elevating this.
Now, possible down the road in a couple months, can we get you back on? And is there any way you can play any of these sounds and voices and disembodied sounds?
You bet I can. Oh, yeah. I mean, any of the EVPs, and many of them I was explaining tonight, they can be played. They can be let the listeners hear them, and I know they would enjoy them. So, yes, that's absolutely a possibility.
Great. Now, again, how do they find your website?
We can be found in multiple locations. On the web, we can be found at entityvoices.com. We are on YouTube under Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations, and we can be found on Facebook. I mean, we're on Twitter. We're on every social media channel. But on Facebook, you can either find me just under Tony Rathman or under Entity Voices. And the majority of the stuff we do on a weekly basis is all posted there. Everything from public investigations we do at the Old Phelps Lodge Hospital to personal investigations we do there, and any other place we go to. Everything we put together in a video format, capturing what we've captured, and it can all be found there.
Great. Well, hey, I want to thank you so much for coming on and spending the time and explaining all the experiences you and your wife had. If I had the money, I would love to go to the Philippines. Of course, I don't know if it's safe there right now with their president they have. But
no, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Well, that might be one reason why not to go. And hopefully, too, this virus, it keeps spiking, and that's scary, too. So who knows what travel is going to be like, because I know it's affecting people, everybody from the paranormal to ufology. Shows are being canceled, seminars are being canceled, events are being canceled because, I don't blame them. I mean, who wants this virus? But I want to thank you, Tony, for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you, Gary. I enjoyed being on. I love discussing the paranormal, so I really appreciate the invite to get to talk to you tonight, and I can't thank you enough.
Okay, my friend, we will talk to you later.
All right, Gary, have a good one.
You too. You take care. Well, James, can you share one of your experiences of the paranormal with us, to the listeners? One of the more scary ones you had.
Well, let's see. Yeah, there's a couple of them. Well, one of them, this one happened September of 2018 in Parma, Ohio. The lady was in there trying to get something, helping a team to help this family trying to get this dark, negative stuff out of there. So, so I'm in there anyway, and I walked in there, and right away something fell off the shelf. First of all, and it's broad daylight, and it come flying off the shelf. And I asked the lady, "Have you had poltergeist activity in here?" She goes, "Oh yeah," and obviously. So that was just to start off, just to get into the house. That happened. So anyway, go on with it. Go down in the basement, and the smell down there was so putrid. But it wasn't like the whole basement. It was like it was moving, like the smell would move, which was weird. It was almost as if there was something there moving around with it, and that was kind of freaky. So then I get upstairs. I'm doing the things, and I get upstairs, and there's this crawl space upstairs that you literally had to crawl to get in. But it was inside this closet, this big closet, dark, real dark up there. Even though it was daylight, it was weird. So the family, the mother, she's showing me there, and they had this little plyboard over the crawl space. Well, as I'm walking toward it, the plyboard over the crawl space come flying. It flew across about 3 foot off, and she jumped back and yelled. And she goes, "What was that?" And I honestly lied to her. I just said it was just a draft, but it wasn't a draft. That was whatever. There was something in there, and it was mad, and it was trying to, deter me, hurt me, or whatever. But that was bone chilling when that thing come flying off there and went across and banged against the other side of the wall. So anyway, now I'm crawling in there, Gary, and I'm doing what I got to do, seeing what I got to say, and just got all the way in there, and I could feel it. It was to my left, and oh boy, and I'm thinking I'm going to look over here. I can just. It was so intense, beaming at me like somebody's staring at you with the meanest look ever. And I can hear a little growl at the same time. So, I'm hesitant to look. I turned my head real slow to look. And when I did, this is no lie, the face I saw looked like the guy of Jeepers Creepers in that movie. And he bum rushed me as soon as I looked at him, and he knocked me over. It knocked me clear over. I was on all fours, knocked me clear over, and it was like a big rush of air come out of there. And that lady jumped back and squalled again. I said it's just a draft, even though she see me get knocked over and stuff. But that was pretty scary. I mean, that was a bad one. That was a really tough, scary one for sure. I even had to sage down the dogs. They were scared to death. It was pretty bad.
Now, have you ever been hurt bad at all in any investigation?
Pretty close. I mean, I've been bit, scratched, pinched, pushed, hit, you name it. Now, there was another one that was just a couple months before that one where there was this evil thing was even worse than the one I just described to you. And it was in an attic above the house that you had to go on a roof to get up into this attic that was screwed shut. And so we had to go in the pitch of the roof was such that you almost would fall off. Well, I was afraid this thing was going to push me off there, and I was so afraid it was going to push me off. And what they keep from doing it, I strapped myself and had a strap on because I've had things try to push me off this before, but I felt for sure they were going to do it. But yeah, I've been pitched, bit, you name it, yeah, all of it. And I tell people you got to watch sometimes because some of these things. I mean, they could blow out your pilot, when you're in deep sleep all night, turn something on you, and boom. So you got to be careful with this stuff. It can do some things.
In other words, while you're at home sleeping, they could decide to off you. Is that what you're saying?
The scenario's there now. You can't prove it, whether it's happened. I'm sure maybe it has, but I can see the possibilities. Yes, for sure.
Wow. So if John Doe wants to pick up ghost hunting and take it as a hobby, in 2 minutes, what would you tell them? What should they do?
What I suggest they do is read all you can read about it, research all you can research about it, and try to find a legit team that's got a few years experience. See if you can ride along with them. Just experience, that's the best way to learn. And then I would totally, before you even do any of that, take a look at your life and think about this. Is it something you really want to do? Because the odds of you are going to end up with attachment, or going to have something follow you home, or you're going to run across something so evil that it's going to start with your pets and work its way up with your youngest daughter or child or son and work its way up to you to make you suffer. These are things you got to think about. These are all possibilities. So are you willing to risk all that? And what reason are you getting into it for? Are you getting into it for your own self-indulging thrills? Or are you getting into it because it's your calling, you really want to help somebody, or you need to find answers? You just got to look at all these things. But bottom line, if you do decide you want to get into it, do all the research you can. Try to find a reputable team that's been around a while and see if you can ride along with them and learn from people that are well experienced.
Well, one thing, like me and you have talked in the past, if you're going to go out ghost hunting by yourself, make sure, one, you have permission that you can go on that property you're investigating, especially if it's an abandoned building. It's never abandoned. Somebody owns it. Two is you don't know what shape it is. You could fall through a floor, fall through a ceiling, or something even worse where you could die and you could be laying in a cellar, for example, for ages before anybody even finds you. So you got to be really careful and always take a phone with you and let people know. Please let people know where you're going, because if you don't show back up home, they can go at least find you.
Oh, that is so important. The key one, let people know where you're going. And yeah, don't go by yourself. Don't be ignorant like I was 30-some years ago and did it like that, some of the places I come across. And, Gary, I actually fell through a roof of a place. And I'll tell you what, I got lucky. I about pulled my arm sockets out because I caught myself at chest level. But, a 200-pounder falling real fast, and when you catch yourself, that hurts.
Oh, I bet it would. And one thing I will say this, okay? On Monday, we're going to be talking about missing people that have gone out in the woods and never returned. And we got a great guest on Monday. We're going to cover missing people. So are they being abducted by aliens, or are they falling in a hole, or falling off a cliff, or whatever? That it will be Monday. Again, we're going to be live, not Memorex, from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock Monday. And next week, we're back to our normal time. So everybody, I want you to have a great weekend. And if you have a relative or a child or a wife, make sure you tell them you love them. And I just can't help but think about Tony and his poor wife making whoopee in their bedroom, and you have a spirit there making comment about it. I don't know. I don't know if I could handle that. That itself is scary. Well, anyway, till Monday, everybody have a good one. Check our website out at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. James, say goodnight.
Good night, and till the next time.
Okay.
With its perfectly crispy chicken, boldly seasoned to perfection, and crisp shredded lettuce, both nestled in a perfectly toasted golden bun, it's no wonder the $1 McDonald's Hot and Spicy McChicken Sandwich is a classic. Cool it down and pair it with a refreshing Coke in any size for just $1 each. Get deals on your faves, only at McDonald's. Prices and participation may vary, cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Coca-Cola is a registered trademark of the Coca-Cola Company. With its perfectly crispy chicken, boldly seasoned to perfection, and crisp shredded lettuce, both nestled in a perfectly toasted golden bun, it's no wonder the $1 McDonald's Hot and Spicy McChicken Sandwich is a classic. Cool it down and pair it with a refreshing Coke in any size for just $1 each. Get deals on your faves, only at McDonald's.